Enhance.
But Mark is a retired U.S. Marine Corps Reserve Mustang Field Grade Infantry Officer, as well as a retired LAPD Patrol Supervisor. Now, he has provided intelligence briefings and tactical training to various state and federal agencies. He has also briefed U.S. and NATO officials regarding the tactical application of less than lethal weaponry. He's also served as a technical advisor for LAPD training films, as well as films produced in Hollywood. Since retiring from the LAPD, he has returned to, his words now, a lazy surfing beach bum, where he has coached and mentored some of the most successful female surfers in competitive surfing from around the world. Mark from Anaheim, Happy New Year. Welcome back to WOL Radio.
Happy New Year, Mr. Nelson. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine.
Is it the end of the world? Are we there?
What they call it, the new normal, the brave new world. You know, before we get started, for the listeners out there, and I know you always have people who may have never heard me before, I want you to know I have no political party affiliation, no political organization affiliation. I don't want anybody here on this radio show today to believe anything that I say. Rather, I would rather you go out, do your own research, make up your own minds. However, I think Mr. Nelson will agree that since I've been doing shows with him since May of 1992, I've yet to have anybody come on this radio show or when we were here in L.A. or down in Florida who can say that I provided you with misinformation, disinformation, or outright lies. Now, you know, Mr. Nelson, we were on the air together last year, January 6, 2021, during that seditious attack on Capitol Hill. And that was one of the worst days for law enforcement. In fact, some people are giving Kamala Harris a hard time right now because she compared January 6th to 9/11. Well, there's a good reason for comparing it to 9/11 because that was the worst day in law enforcement regarding casualties since 9/11. Perhaps a lot of people in this country don't know that. You had more than 150 police officers from the Capitol Police, Metropolitan Police Department, a few other agencies who suffered injuries. You know, some of them had major injuries. You had one police officer who had responded to that rioting. He later died from a stroke. You had 4 additional police officers who responded to that rioting, who have since died from suicide. And, you know, sadly, Mr. Nelson, what they don't tell you, there are a whole lot of law enforcement personnel who were there that day who are now suffering from major PTSD. So what I choose to do today is dedicate my radio show appearance to the women and men who actually tried to do their jobs during that seditious attack on Capitol Hill, even when there were other people up there ordering them to stand down. Because sadly for me, Mr. Nelson, when I watched that last year, and as you know, we were on the air together, it reminded me of November 1979 in Iran, when Marines were trying to do their job at the U.S. Embassy, and they were ordered to stand down. And, you know, I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this as a retired Marine. I suspect that if all the law enforcement personnel had followed the orders to stand down that day last year, the U.S. Capitol would have been lost, just as we lost that embassy in Iran. So, you know, there it is.
But was it more attack on the building or was it more on the attack of democracy?
It wasn't about the building. You're talking about people who had a deliberate attempt and the ability to carry it out to murder Nancy Pelosi, the Vice President of the United States, and several other elected officials on Capitol Hill. That's not about the building. That's about the government.
That's my question.
That's a cool thing. People can call it look, I have never missed my words when it came to this. I call it a seditious attack, but that was an attempted coup to overthrow the government, the U.S. federal government. And anybody else who calls it a tour on Capitol Hill, an insurrection, they're only doing the same thing that Antifa and the liberals were doing in Portland. I don't even waste my time debating that, discussing that, or conversing with anybody who's going to think that way, because that's a false narrative. This is an attempted coup, Mr. Nelson. It's fascism, because apparently Biden got up there today and he sounded all fire and brimstone. I didn't hear him use the F word. You know, it's interesting, Mr. Nelson, the Republicans have no problem calling, especially the John Birch Society libertarians who've taken over the Republican Party. And I know because I deal with these knuckleheads on various Facebook sites that I'm the administrator for. Anytime you disagree with them, you're a communist. They throw that term out there anytime they want. They just throw it up against the wall, hoping to stick. But these folks will never call these far-right wingers who they are. They're fascists. And until Biden and the rest of these elected officials on the so-called Democratic side, including Republicans, use that F word, nothing's going to change.
Well, let me ask you this. What we saw last year, was that a dress rehearsal? Can we expect more stuff like that?
Well, you know, Mr. Nelson, and you're being very polite when you introduced me today. Those of us within the spook community, we use the term, while some folks call it a failed coup, some of us call that a practice. And it's interesting because the Atlantic magazine, the February 2022 issue, that's exactly what they say on the cover. January 6th was practice.
Wow. So who are these folks if they get what they want, which is they want the White House, obviously? What's the next move?
Well, Mr. Nelson, folks have to do some history. And I know you have some serious researchers out there with the pens and papers ready. So what I will say for you is, like the last time I was on with you was on Thanksgiving Day. And during that show, I provided your listeners with the name of an exclusive club that few people have ever heard of. But it's a major group that's behind the scenes that has a major impact on U.S. politics. And I told you a group about the Alfalfa Club. So for those who may not have heard that show, the Alfalfa Club. Now, that's a group that was named in honor of the memory of Robert E. Lee. Yet you got folks like Barack Obama and Joe Biden who seem to have no problem attending their functions. Check out the Alfalfa Club and see how influential. They only meet once a year. In fact, I believe that meeting's coming up rather soon. So, in Washington, D.C. So with everything that's been happening since the election of Barack Obama in 2008, now I have a list, my personal list, and I just, the numbers just keep growing. But I've narrowed my list down to 70 organizations that most people in this country have never heard of, but they're major impact on U.S. politics. And these are all right-wing organizations, okay? But the three that I say, the top three, which I consider the most influential in creating the hatred and the anger which has polarized this country, which is now ubiquitous throughout the U.S. today. Number one, the Council for National Policy. You ever heard of it, Mr. Nelson?
No, I have not.
Number two, the Western Goals Foundation. And number three, the John Birch Society. Once again, Council for National Policy, Western Goals Foundation, and the John Birch Society. Because what's happening here is not just happening here. This is going on worldwide. Authoritarianism is happening worldwide. Fascism is emerging worldwide. It's just like in that JFK movie from 30 years ago, where you had Kevin Bacon, who was in prison down in Angola prison in Louisiana. And he told you fascism is coming back. That 5-minute scene with Kevin Bacon and Kevin Costner, I mean, the rest of the movie has a lot of validity. And I know Oliver Stone has just come out with the 30th anniversary version.
Yeah, hold that thought right there. You got to take a short break. Folks, you want to speak to Mark from Anaheim, reach out to us, 800-450-7876. We'll take your calls after the short break on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Listen to the Carl Nelson Show on Alexa.
Thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. Call a couple of your friends and tell them Mark from Anaheim's on the radio. They will thank you. I guarantee that. As Mark always says, don't believe what he says, just look it up. That's what we're all about on this show. Think for yourselves, just research yourself. Just Google it sometimes and some of the stuff that he talked about if you disbelieve. So, Mark, I'll let you finish your thought. Then I've got a question for you that we posed to Dr. Gerald Horn yesterday. Okay.
Yeah, so what I was saying before the break was the three organizations out there that I see that are the most influential and has caused this great polarization throughout the United States. Number one, the Council for National Policy. Now, I became not really introduced to them, but became familiar with them because when I became a second lieutenant, and I was up there in the D.C. area, Reagan was president, air traffic controllers were on strike, and I went back to College of Charleston back in 1982 for graduation. Well, the guest speaker at the College of Charleston was Gene Kirkpatrick. Remember that name, Mr. Nelson?
I sure do.
And see, the great thing about Gene Kirkpatrick, and I'm using her, cite her as an example, Gene Kirkpatrick was a Democratic, but whose administration was she working for?
Was it Clinton or
81?
81.
Ronald Reagan.
Oh, Republican. Oh, okay.
And she, believe it or not, she was to the right of Ronald Reagan. Okay. So I'll never forget, because during that graduation, Gene Kirkpatrick was the one that told me the adage, Lieutenant, never sweat the small stuff. Everything is the small stuff. So, I won't say that Gene Kirkpatrick and I agreed on a lot of things politically, but I did listen to that woman because that woman, except for the God, she was a chain smoker. I learned a lot from her in the short time I was able to spend with her. But she was the person who I knew that was a member of the CNP, Council for National Policy. So for you listeners out there, you do some research, because see, that's the umbrella group. So a lot of these other groups that you may hear about, they feed in. But that group, Mr. Nelson, they got their tentacles in every country on this planet. I'll say that again. They have their tentacles into every single country on this planet, and most people have never heard of them. And then I also talked to you about the Western Goals Foundation. Now, you know, I'm retired from LAPD. Western Goals Foundation were the ones who were responsible for the biggest domestic spy scandal in this country involving LAPD. You had an organization called the Public Disclosure Intelligence Division. And that organization, of course, was renamed and reshuffled. But a lot of guys lost their jobs. A lot of guys were forced to retire when that whole thing came out. And that was all underneath the third organization I said, John Birch Society. Because the guy who headed the Western Goals Foundation, who also headed the John Birch Society at that time, was a congressman out of Georgia, who supposedly was one of the victims who was shot down on Korean Airlines Flight 007. That's how Newt Gingrich got in. He's John Birch Society, too. Practically everybody who was in Trump's administration, including Trump, John Birch Society. So I know a lot of folks think I keep saying that like it's no big deal, or I sound like a broken record. Folks, they're here. Gingrich told you we're taking back the country. They've done it. While folks sat around and kept saying it won't happen here, it has happened. Okay? So to answer your question, Ms. Nutt, you had, Rupert Murdoch with his media empire. They've already destroyed Australia and much of the United Kingdom, and now it's the United States. So meanwhile, you got mainstream media in this country. They don't even identify the names I just told you. You don't hear them talk about this. Your so-called progressive radio shows, I don't hear Stephanie Miller talk about what I'm telling you. I don't hear Tom Hartman talking about it. So maybe they're all in on it too. Because if they're not telling you what I'm telling you, then they're either liars or they're ignorant. And I don't think they're ignorant. So anyway, worse this week, Mr. Nelson, I'm listening to a radio show that I'm not even going to give any credit by naming them on the air, but you'll know who they are because Craig Hewlett used to come on your show, and he no longer appears on that show because they called him an N-word lover for appearing on your your radio show. So anyway, on this radio show on Monday night, they had a guest on, and this is what the guest says. While Obama was in the White House, 99% of all media constantly supported Obama. And then when Trump gets in the White House, 99% of the media did nothing but attack Donald Trump. And I'm like, what planet, what world? And then I realized, what am I doing? He doesn't believe this stuff. He knows that the bigger the lie, the more people believe it. The more you repeat the lie, the more people believe it. Now, Mr. Nelson, 97% of all media in this country today, as I'm speaking to you, is controlled by 6 corporations, okay? I'm in the L.A. area, which is only second to New York when it comes to media. So I'm in the second largest media outlet in the United States. And I'm like, what stations out here would even carry your show? Only one that I know of, possibly, and that's KJLH. I mean, yeah, KJLH. If that was if that was to happen, there's no other station out here who carry your show. It wouldn't be on no Tavis Smiley. Those are progressives. They're not. Those folks. They know. They're not out there. They're progressives, and so I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm just saying, when it comes to somebody who can come on the radio and tell this large radio audience that 99% of the media was for Obama when he was in office, and at the same time they were against Trump when he was in office, and people sit there and believe this crap? Because that's what they do. They only listen to outlets that do nothing but constantly lie to them to the point that it must be the truth, because they don't have anybody who ever comes on those shows that gives a different point of view. So, it's sad. So if your listeners want a better idea of what is happening today, I strongly suggest that they research those 3 organizations. And these folks, Mr. Nelson, because there's a name here for you folks if you haven't heard before, Ayn Rand. These folks are Ayn Rand cultists. They want to see, to answer your question, a total dissolution of the U.S. federal government. I am not being hyperbolic when I say this to you. I came on your show back after Trayvon Martin was killed because I saw how they were fomenting the hatred and anger, and I told your listeners, the only thing these folks hate more than the U.S. government was seeing a Negro in the White House. That sent them off the deep end. So back in the 1930s, Mr. Nelson, you had a group called the American Liberty League. Basically, your Republican Party, which has now been hijacked by the John Birch Society Tea Party Libertarians, is close to what the American Liberty League was. And they are funded by the robber barons. At least that's what they were called back in the 20s and 30s. Actually, it started in the 1890s. In fact, it's kind of ironic because the magazine that actually gave them that name, today we know them as Atlantic Magazine, but back in those days it was the Atlantic Monthly. The first ones to coin that term, robber barons. So you're talking the wealthiest industrialists. You're talking the wealthiest bankers. You're talking the same folks who So you're talking people like the Morgans, the DuPonts, okay? And in the 1930s, Mr. Nelson, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he went after them. He demonized them. They hated him. And they attempted a coup against FDR. Now, General Smedley Butler, Marine Corps, was the one who helped to thwart that coup attempt. So what they did after failing in that coup attempt, they actually ran a guy for president against FDR in 1936. His name was Alfred Landon, and FDR won in a landslide. Why? Because FDR called these people out for what they were. They were fascists. But sadly, Mr. Nelson, today, you don't have the Democratic Party, nor do you have all these Republicans who claim they're distancing themselves from Trump, calling them fascists. So I don't see the outcome of a landslide victory today in the Democratic Party. I expect these folks will take the House of Representatives this fall, and I also expect them to take back the White House in 2024. That's the agenda. And once they've done that, we'll probably have that Article 5 convention. You know, I hear folks keep using these terms, constitutional amendment. That's not what they want. There's a big difference between an Article 5 convention and a constitutional amendment. But since we don't study civics in this country, folks don't know that. Article 5 convention, well, a constitutional amendment, they're going to come in and pass something like a, Roe versus Wade, because there was no abortion mentioned in the original Constitution. That's not what Article 5 convention does, Mr. Nelson. An Article 5 convention eliminates the U.S. federal government entirely and returns everything back to each individual state. So if you don't know the difference in that, then do some research before going out and publicly speaking about it, because there's a big difference, and there's a major difference in the impact of what's happening. And they're close, Mr. Nelson. They're not far. Well, they may have enough. They may have enough states after the midterm elections. I know I heard you had a guest on a little while ago talking about people running for office. Democratic Party, generally speaking, focuses on national elections. All politics is local. Republican Party, they focus on school boards, magistrates, local elections, and then they get these people embedded where later on they can promote them on the national level, where they follow something like, a playbook by ALEC, the American Legislative Exchange Committee. So, did that answer your question, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, it sure did.
And here's the thing, Mr. Nelson. These folks, they learned a lot, okay? Iran-Contra, the only reason that was even investigated is because they used taxpayers' money. Well, these wealthy John Birch Society folks, these wealthy industrials today, see, Hillary Clinton used that term, deplorables. Oh, they're deplorables, but they're not your poor whites. See, that's what everybody focused on when she said deplorable. Oh, they're deplorables, but they're your wealthy whites, because they want this country to return to wealthy, white, male land owners. That's who rules. They couldn't care less about blacks, browns, or even white women, or poor whites. So you have folks like, for example, Mr. Nelson, retired Air Force General Thomas McEnany. For you folks out there who don't know how that last name is spelled, because I know you folks are writing notes down, so I'll say this slowly. M as in Mary, C as in Charles, I as in Ida, N as in Nancy, E, R, N as in Nancy, E, Y. McEnany. Thomas McEnany.
Hold that thought right there, because we got to take a short break before you get into Thomas McEnany. Folks, you want to join us? 800-450-7876. Speak to Mark from Anaheim. Your calls will be next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Listen to the Carl Nelson Show now on our free mobile app.
And thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. As I mentioned, Mark's not his real name. He's real name from Anaheim, but that's a whole different story. 800-450-7876 if you'd like to speak to him. Before we let you, was about to tell us about Thomas McEnany. So, Mark, I'll let you pick it up from there.
sad, Mr. Nelson, because he was an Air Force general, and, you know, he did his job well. And as time went on, he gets older, and as time went on, he becomes a little bit more senile. And he's one of these older white men who did nothing but listen to right-wing radio, and he got programmed. So he was a frequent guest on Fox, and this guy was so far to the right that Fox had to let him go. Now, why do I mention him? Because you have folks as this particular general. In fact, when I think of this general, he reminds me of, there was a movie called 7 Days in May. I highly recommend that one, folks. Write that one down. 7 Days in May. They'll give you a little background on that movie, too. Michael Douglas' father. Kirk Douglas plays a Marine Corps colonel in that movie. And he's almost playing the role of Smedley Butler stopping a coup. But the interesting thing about that movie, 7 Days in May, the movie starts off with a big demonstration outside the White House. That was actually film footage from a demonstration going on outside the White House. And because Kennedy actually allowed them to film there, they were doing the movie, and a lot of the people who were in the movie ended up getting mixed up with real demonstrators outside the White House. But the movie, Burt Lancaster stars in the movie, and he's this far right-wing John Birch Society general, where they want to overthrow the government. And that 7 Days in May is pretty much coming to pass. So when you have guys like this retired general and others who have gained the respect of a lot of other people who've come behind them, and now these folks are out there spouting this far right-wing agenda, they're heavily, Mr. Nelson, what I was saying before the break was the fact that Iran-Contra was investigated because they use taxpayers' money. Well, these folks have amassed wealth while they're using private funding, which means they have been under the radar, Mr. Nelson, amassing their weapons, amassing their wealth, and amassing their own army. Hell, you got DeSantis right there in your state in Florida talking about creating his own private damn militia. That's not the National Guard, folks. And even the National Guard belongs to the governor. So a lot of these red states right now, the governors are telling their National Guard, you don't even have to listen to Biden. You work for me. That's what's going on, Mr. Nelson. So you said you had a question for me from yesterday?
Yeah, I have a question for you from yesterday, because we talked about this with
Dr. You pregnant, or you speaking French?
No, I'm speaking of everybody on the show. Anyway, it says much talk about the military coup in the U.S. I think the story originated out of Canada, and it says Canada is preparing to receive U.S. refugees. He also mentions that 3 generals in the Washington Post are concerned about the military splitting.
Well, okay. It's interesting because you and I were on the air live back in 2017, right after, I'm saying 2017, I'm sorry, let's see. It was in November of 2006, no, we were on the air in January of 2017, because you asked me, well, one of your callers asked, what do I see this country looking like after Trump becomes president? And I said, well, the plan was for it to look more like The Handmaid's Tale. And I said, if you all want to know what I'm talking about, find a book by Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale, or find a movie that had Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall is in the movie The Handmaid's Tale. And without knowing it, you and I go to a break, we come back, and there's a guy from Hulu. So I don't know who he was, but he represented Hulu. And he said, you all don't know it, but we're in the process right now of making a television show, The Handmaid's Tale. And then the following week, they had the Super Bowl, and that's when it was formally announced. So actually, your radio show was the first time Hulu announced that they were doing Handmaid's Tale. Now, since that time, that show has become very popular. Now, what's really interesting, Mr. Nelson, harping back on these progressives, I hear progressive radio talk show hosts saying, oh, well, I don't watch that show because I don't need to be told. Another one's like, well, I can't watch it because it's too violent. And that's exactly why these folks are going to get away with what they're doing. because Handmaid's Tale comes right out and shows you how people started fleeing into Canada when this goes down. So it's interesting you mentioned Canada. Now, I haven't read anything from the Washington Post regarding these three generals, but I suspect what they're alluding to, in fact, is this, Mr. Nelson. When I joined LAPD in '84, my biggest concern was how would I respond if I found myself working with a corrupt cop as my partner? Today, I thank God I'm neither in the Marine Corps nor LAPD, because my biggest concern would be, am I working with somebody who supports what happened on January 6, 2021? Because picture this scenario, Mr. Nelson. Biden or whoever represents the Democratic Party runs for office. But we'll say Biden. I'll make this simple. Biden runs for re-election. And the Republican Party puts up whoever. DeSantis, Trump. Yeah, Trump might run again, folks. And after the election, regardless of who they decided as the winner, what if Biden gets the Electoral College votes? Who would be declared the president, Mr. Nelson?
His opposition, probably.
No, if Biden gets the Electoral College votes, who would be declared
He would.
And if these folks who have continued saying that Biden stole the election last time, and now you've got a whole lot of people in the U.S. Armed Forces that are loyal to the CNP, John Birch Society, Western Goals Foundation, and a whole lot of other splinter groups like the Boogaloo Boys, Proud Boys, Oath Keepers. You could have a situation, Mr. Nelson, where you have certain members in uniform siding with the Republican candidate, while certain members in the same uniforms siding with the commander-in-chief at the time, who was President Biden. And folks, trust me, we're a lot closer to that than you may ever suspect. And I don't come on this show to lie to you, and I don't come on this show to be hyperbolic. I just call it the way I see it. And I'm telling you, that's how dangerous it is right now. It's gotten to the point where the armed forces is actually telling folks that we're not going to monitor your social media activity, but if you are a member of the armed forces and you become aware of another member who is in some of these subversive group social media sites and are clicking like and supporting their ideas, you're supposed to report it. Yeah, right, please. No, they're in the U.S. Armed Forces. People will sit here and talk about how they're U.S. citizens and they don't give up their rights when they join the U.S. Armed Forces. Damn, I wish somebody had told me that when I was in the Marine Corps. Just like this crap about not taking the vaccination. I couldn't care less how you feel about the vaccination. All I know is the first day I stepped in the boot camp, because I'm a Mustang, for you don't know what that means, I was prior enlisted before I became an officer. First day I stepped in the boot camp, I had 2 guns hitting both of my arms at the same time, shooting me up with like 8 vaccinations at one time. Nobody asked me whether I wanted a shot or not. So I don't know what the hell people are talking about in the Marine Corps and the Navy SEALs are talking about. They're not. Those are folks who are Biden haters that you see now who are refusing to take the vaccination. So what, they can take every other vaccination but not this one? Where do you draw the line? So a lot of these folks that are using even the Marines and the Navy SEALs, because God forbid, there are poster boys, and Biden hates the Marines because he's booting them out. Mr. Nelson, you do realize that everybody in the Air Force that has refused are also being booted out? Everybody in the Navy that's refused are also being booted out? Everybody in the Army? But see, that doesn't make the poster boy the way the Marines and the Navy SEALs do. So let's push the buttons by saying Biden he's a dictator. Because these right-wing folks are the masters of what we call projection. Everything you hear them accusing, and I'm no Biden fan, folks. I didn't vote for Biden. I'm not a Biden fan at all. I'm no Harris fan either. So what I'm just saying to you, everything you hear them accusing Biden of, is really what they're saying about themselves. Trump was the master of that too. He's great at projection. When they're saying that Biden is the dictator, no, they plan on replacing Biden with the dictator. And it may very well be your boy down there in Florida, Ron DeSantis, because he was an attorney in the U.S. Navy for a lot of these Navy SEALs who should be in prison. So that he's bought their loyalty. And like I said, he's creating his own private militia down there in Florida as I'm speaking to you right now. What was your question, Melissa?
Yeah, that was a question. I got a bunch of folks who have questions for you, but I got a tweet for you. Yeah.
I thought you wanted to ask me something about false flag or something.
Oh yes, no, it was one of our listeners wanted to know about false flag. She wanted to ask Gerald Horner, but she called in late, so she texted me and says, "Please ask Mark about false flag." What she wanted you to tell her, what is a false flag, and can you give her an example?
You are listening to SPWD.
All right, well, I'll give you the best example, a classic example.
I tell you, well, hold that thought right there, because we're coming up on a break. I don't want to interrupt you, because I guess it's important to this lady. She says she wants to know about the false flag and the Black Swan event as well. So she had another question. 800-450-7876. You want to speak to Mark? Got a question? Reach out to us, and we'll take your calls next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Please hit the like button and hit the share.
Folks, I guess it's Mark from Anaheim. I'd like to speak to you. Got
very important. It's very important stuff.
800-450-7876. Before we get back to him, let me remind you, tomorrow is Friday, so you all know, and we invite you to free your mind. When we say that, we want you to think for yourself and join us for our first Open Forum Friday of 2022. We start at 4 p.m. promptly Eastern Time, right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Mark, the lady's name is Roberta, and she actually posed this question back on Thanksgiving, but she was late getting in when you were on the air. She wanted to an example. If you could explain what a false flag is and give an example, and she also wanted to know what is the Black Swan event.
All right, my quintessential example of a false flag. He's no longer with us. Another Marine, Philip Rettinger was his name, and Philip Rettinger was CIA and Marine Corps officer. Back in 1954, you had John Foster Dulles was the Secretary of State, while his brother Allen Dulles was head of CIA. And they were heavily involved with what was called United Fruit Company. Today, you folks know them as Chiquita Banana, which is those terms they call banana republics. So even if you guys watch movies like Narcos that talks about Pablo Escobar down in Colombia and what was going on in Chile and Peru, even back in those days, with the John Birch Society, Reagan was in the White House during Pablo Escobar's heyday, they were all focused on communism, communism, communism. They didn't even pay attention to Narcos until it turned out that some of the narco terrorists were also using communists for their agenda. They weren't communists, but they used them for their agenda. And then, of course, Reagan had them coin the term narco, terrorism, because they linked them together. But back in '54, before it was Chiquita Banana, it was United Fruit Company. Philip Rettinger is the one. I actually have videotapes of Phil Rettinger staging this phony attack down in Guatemala. And they called the president of Guatemala at the time, Jacobo Arbenz. And they labeled him a communist. Typical John Birch Society smear tactic. Philip Rettinger, the reason I have these tapes is Philip Rettinger was really regretful later on in life because he realized, thanks to him overthrowing the government of Guatemala, it led to death squads in places like Nicaragua, El Salvador, Chile, Peru, Guatemala, all over the place down there, especially when Reagan was in the White House in the 70s. But it was going on since the 50s. They went after Che Guevara and a whole bunch of other folks. Cuba, too. So the best example for you folks, just look up the name Arbenz, A-R-B-E-N-Z, Guatemala. And Philip Rettinger was the mastermind behind that. It was a masterful operation because he had folks on the radio talking about this big attack. Mr. Meltzer, they had one airplane. There was no attack. But it got the people all riled up, and then, we sent our assets down there to stop this attack. They overthrew Arbenz, who was a democratically elected leader, and replaced him with somebody who was one of our puppets. That's why you have so many immigrants fleeing from south up here. Most people don't come here from Mexico. They come through Mexico, but they're not from Mexico. Because they're coming from all these countries further south where we have gone down there and screwed with their democratically elected governments. So if you folks don't want all these illegal immigrants here, tell your government to stop messing with democratically elected governments south of the border. And as far as black swan, you know, that's a term that I guess people use in the millennial years because we used to use the term blowback. Basically, you have a situation where you may have done a good job of planning something, but the outcome didn't exactly work out the way you expected it to. And that could be good or bad, depending on what your political agenda is. But usually a black swan refers to, because I don't have the listener here to specify it, but in the spook community, we used to call it blowback. So I'll give you a good example, Ms. Nelson. Well, going back to Pablo Escobar, we would actually get in, when I say we, the United States government and the war on drugs, you know, it doesn't matter that Ali Null's heading this war on drugs and his secretary, Fawn Hall, is doing the best cocaine off of Ali's desk in his office, okay? But anyway, down in South America, for example, to go after Pablo Escobar, it wouldn't be uncommon for us to get in bed with his rival drug dealers. And the blowback from that is now Pablo is gone. That has destabilized at least with Pablo Escobar, there was some stability because he headed the whole cartel, and this is the Medellin cartel. But then after Pablo was gone, now you got the Cali cartel coming in, and then you had more bloodshed with war going on. Kind of what we did to Iraq. We removed Saddam Hussein when there was actually some stability over there in the so-called Middle East, because I don't use that term. And then after Saddam Hussein was removed from power, you had major instability in that region. So that would be considered a blowback or a black swan, at least the way I've known it in the spook community.
All right. Got a bunch of folks got questions for
Mr. Nelson, we're not doing this today. Last time I was on your show, I told you what we're going to discuss, and we never even finished discussing it. So let's finish discussing what I was going to plan on talking about before we take calls. I think you have some more questions for me.
Yeah, last year.
Yeah, how about that? See, and then I never finished what I get to say, and I have people calling me with some silly questions that I don't answer anyway.
All right, hey, let me get this other three question for you. Last year on January 6th, you appeared with us as the rioting was taking place on Capitol Hill. Now, during the show, you stated that few would actually be prosecuted from what we saw, and everybody's all over around the world saw that. Do you still see that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you why, folks. Now, most of my mentors were World War II Officers of Strategic Services, OSS Old Boys, World War II Office of Naval Intelligence, ONI, and World War II Nazi expats that were brought here to the U.S., and they taught me well, okay? Now, here in California, during the 1960s and 70s, much of the turmoil you saw here, especially in the Bay Area and L.A. County during COINTELPRO, it was orchestrated by the John Birch Society. You had Ronald Reagan was your governor, and then you had an attorney general who was an OSS old boy by the name of Evel J. Younger. So that's a name for you listeners out there. If you want to know what's going on and why this is happening today, there is a name for you. E.V. as in Victor, E-L-L-E, Younger. Evel J. Younger. Now here in L.A., of course, he had close ally because the John Birch Society mayor was Sam Yoy. Meanwhile, up in San Francisco, you had your John Birch Society mayor, Joseph Alioto, who was also a banker, by the way, who helped to finance a lot of their agenda. Now, in addition to Younger being the attorney general here, he was also a general in the U.S. Air Force Reserves. So I strongly recommend you folks do some research on Evel J. Younger. When you want to know about programs that took out guys like Bunchy Carter, Huggins at UCLA, when you want to know what was going on with United Slaves, when you want to know what was going on with the American Indian movement, it's amazing how much influence Evel Younger had. And Mr. Nelson, when I look at that writing, I told your listeners the day after Biden and Harris swore in, because I came on your show. I waited till to make sure they were in the White House. And I said, you're not going to see these people, the vast majority will not be prosecuted, just like Lincoln didn't go after them, all those generals who committed treason during the Civil War, because they're all Masonic brothers and sisters. So I ask you, Mr. Nelson, how much prosecution has happened in over a year since we've been here?
I think we should ask Merrick Garland.
And how many major players have been prosecuted? Or you have, no, here's the worst part, Mr. You have a white woman who gets in front of the judge and goes, you know, I was duped, I was misled, and now that I've done some research, I realized I was wrong. I throw myself at the mercy of the court. So he slaps her on the wrist. You know what she did after that? She went on Fox and laughed at the idiot judge for slapping her on the wrist. I'm not making this up, folks. It was all a game in court that she played. Now, the reason I mentioned Elva Younger, to answer your question, Mr. Nelson, Elva Younger had a very interesting quote. Any incompetent lawyer can delay a trial for months or years. A competent lawyer can delay one even longer. That's the game they're playing, folks. They are delaying this, Mr. Nelson, hoping the statute of limitations will run out, but more importantly, they're biding their time until the midterm elections, Mr. Nelson, because I just said to you, they're going to take back the House. And when they take back the House, these investigations are going to be over, Mr. Nelson. And if they take back the White House, like I think they're going to be, not only these investigations be over, you and I will probably end up in some damn prison. And I'm not being hyperbolic. That's what's coming down, folks. That's why I don't want to take silly phone calls from people who are going to ask me about stuff that we're not talking about today. If we're not talking about January 6th, 2021, don't waste my time, because I'm not going to answer your question. If you think I'm being rude, then grow up, because that's why I'm here today. This is some serious stuff, folks. We're about to head into a civil war. And I've been trying to warn you folks, that's why I don't do radio shows anymore. The only reason I came on this show today was out of courtesy to Mr. Nelson and the fact that I was on this show last year at this time. Because I'm tired. I sit back, pop my popcorn, and just wait for the cities to burn. Because I've spent most of my life warning you about this day coming, and then I get folks who call in with their silly questions or worry because they see me in photographs of some white girl at the beach, when all I do is coach surfers. Send me some black girls, and you'll see me with some black girls at the beach. So if you're going to call in today, call in about January 6th, or just listen, and hopefully you'll learn something.
All right, before we take calls, though, do you still see us heading towards a civil war, or has it started?
Not only are we headed for a civil war, Mr. Nelson, it's worse now than ever before. Now, I highly recommend, please, folks, you can go online if you want to get the magazine. I get a subscription. I don't get paid by these companies. When I recommend a book, a movie, I don't get paid. Nothing I do, I get paid for. Please get a copy of the January-February 2022 issue of the Atlantic Monthly. Finally, a magazine has come out. Practically the entire issue is telling you what I have been trying to warn you folks for the last 30 years. Sad thing about it, it's kind of late, folks. But what I really like about it, they not only tell you what I've been telling you, they tell you what has been going on within the Republican Party since January 6, 2021, while you're distracted with George Floyd. I came on your show, Mr. Nelson, I said, look, I'm sorry that George Floyd is dead, but George Floyd has no impact on my life. While you folks are out there worried about George Floyd or some black girl who's smoking dope before the Olympics or Bill Cosby getting out of prison, these folks are passing laws where all you folks who voted for Biden and Harris will not even be able to vote coming up in the midterm elections. They are replacing nonpartisan vote counters with partisan vote counters around the country right now. That's what's going on. And this magazine, no other have I seen, has actually laid it out to show you that Trump is in a position today better than he was when he ran back in 2017. And I am not making this up. And if I sound pissed off, you're damn right I'm pissed off. Because you folks are so busy worried about making money and talking about white supremacy, white supremacy, white supremacy. And these folks are taking your country back, just like Newt Gingrich said.
All right, hold that thought right there. Yeah, it's a short break, so stations can identify themselves down the line. Stations like FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
The Carl Nelson Show on 1450 and 95.9. Worldwide at WOLDCnews.com.
And thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is Mark from Anaheim. Still have a chance to call up a couple of your friends and let them know that Mark's on the radio. I guarantee that you're going to learn something, and I guarantee also that they'll thank you. Mark, I'll let you finish your thought, then we'll take some calls.
I'm just going to say one thing, and we'll take some calls. You know, there's one good thing that came out of January 6th, Mr. Nelson?
What was that?
Excuse me. Since January 6th, I have not been receiving daily threats or daily attacks from social media from present and former cops who were using social media, especially on the secret Facebook sites, trying to disparage my character and reputation because I'm trying to tell people what's going on. And they know if people listen to what I'm saying, then they can't accomplish what they want. Of course, I suspect it's still going on, but sadly, because Facebook and these other social media sites have been cracking down somewhat, not as much as I wish they would, a lot of these folks have gone to the dark net, and I'm not going to go to the dark net. But, Ms. Nelson, on a daily basis, I would have, and these are cops I've trained, okay? I mean, like I said, I had one former recruit who, like 4 years ago, when the Civil War starts, are you going to join us? Join us who? Oath Keepers. Why the hell would I join a bigoted organization, the Oath Keepers, that was created by somebody from the John Birch Society? And this former recruit said to me, well, I guess I'll see you in my rifle sights when the war starts. Now, mind you, Mr. Nelson, he's not only one of my former LAPD recruits, he's somebody who I personally was in his wedding because he was an Army officer, and I was the highest-ranking U.S. Armed Forces officer at his wedding who swatted his wife, well, no longer his wife, but his wife at the time, on the butt with my Marine Corps sword. That's how divided this country has become, Mr. Nelson. A guy who I've trained, a guy who I was in his wedding, is telling me that he's going to see me in his rifle sights when the Civil War started. And you folks are worried about Bill Cosby.
What they calls in? Let me ask you, is that because of the propaganda that's coming out of the Fox News sort of echo chamber that they have?
It's not just Fox News, Mr. Nelson. See, here's the problem, okay? Back in the 90s, I came on your show and talked about a book by Alvin and Heidi Toffler called War and Anti-War. Now, that book was written in the early 90s. In that book, a colonel was being interviewed. This was a colonel in Bosnia. And somebody was interviewing him about the war in Bosnia. He goes, listen, if all you heard every day on your radio and television was David Duke, the same thing would be happening in your country. That's in a book from the early 90s, Mr. Nelson. That's what's been happening in this country since Clinton became president. When Clinton became president, that's when the rise of Rush Limbaugh started. That's when Clear Channel started buying up all the AM stations. Now you have Sinclair and Cumulus and iHeart. There is no outlet, Mr. Nelson. Why do you think I come on this show with you? I thank God for Kathy Hughes. I thank God for WL. I'm not going to be, what I'm saying to you on this show right now, nobody else is going to hear it anywhere else. How many people are hearing this show? Most young folks, they don't listen to terrestrial radio anymore. You're on AM. If I was to buy a new car right now, I couldn't even get this radio show. Even here in L.A., KNX is going to FM now because it's all being controlled. They have learned to control the outlets. And you got your folks like, I'll just say, I don't expect you to say anything. Don't say anything. This is on me. And then you have your folks who look like we do, as we do, like Armstrong Williams, who's the front man for them buying up TV and radio stations. That's what's going on, Mr. Nelson. They're controlling the media while telling everybody the media is liberal. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But they already know what they're doing. So before my blood pressure goes any higher, let's take some phone calls.
All right, 800-450-7876. Muhammad's in D.C. is online too. Muhammad, you have a question for Mark?
Yeah. So, are we supposed to just grab the Vaseline and get our women ready to be raped and give our children to these people, or are you really an ex-Marine? Do you know how to take out targets and set up strategies and fight for your freedom? Or are you?
I've been telling people.
Hold on. Or are you just promoting the boogeyman? Marine, go ahead.
Allow me to know when I can speak when you finish.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
So if you have ever listened to me before, you will know that your question is asinine, because I've been trying to tell people for more than 30 years what exactly to do. One, I even said on this show today, all politics starts at the local level. And if you want to stop this, you got to get people in on the local elections to get changes at the national level. As far as the Marine Corps thing goes, what I was going to say to Mr. Nelson before we went to the break, not only has the criticism against me and attacks by former and present cops against me have ceased since January 6th, but listeners from Mr. Nelson's show have been doing nothing but asking me to send them information on a bug-out bag, something I've been trying to tell the listeners about for more than 15 damn years. I've been trying to warn people and prepare people. Where the hell you been? So if you haven't heard me before, don't come on the show today trying to be no punk, because I know damn well I ain't no punk, and I'll meet you anywhere you want. I've seen the damn things you don't even want to know about. You're talking to the wrong brother to try to still come on this show about some Vaseline. So if that's your question, let's move on to another call.
All right, 800-450-7876. Michael's in Brooklyn. Michael, your question for Mark from Anaheim.
Yeah, he has a lot of comments about, the as far as what's going on, with the January the 6th. But my question is, do you have any comments on the federal involvement in the January the 6th? I've heard something like that as far as there being Asian provocateurs who are actually involved in what was going on. And also, as far as, like, I'm in New York City, and, ever since this COVID situation has came in, like, stuff is really restricted. Like, I know a lot of some of my friends, colleagues, they actually ended up losing their job because they didn't want to get the shot. So the way I look at it, maybe Trump and the John Birch Society, they're bad, but I mean, I look at my life and how it's affected since Biden took over, with the way fuel prices have pretty much caused everything to go up as far as because fuel prices, it seems that drives inflation. I'm just getting into the trucking business, and I'm just noticing the price of how fuel is skyrocketed. So I'm kind of like, it seems like we're screwed both ways, whether if we're dealing with the Trump administration or whether we're dealing with Democratic administration. I mean, to be truthfully be told,
Michael, put it in a question form so he can respond. We know all of that. So just put in a question form.
I asked the question. I said,
okay, well, good. Let's give him a chance to respond. We thank you for your call. Thank you for your call. Mark, you want to respond to him?
Well, the only part of a question I heard was he asked me something in regards to whether there was a federal involvement. I don't know what that means. Of course there was a federal involvement. Do you really think these people who come from all around the country knew exactly where to go once they got to the Capitol Hill? That's why I'm very disappointed with the Biden administration for not doing anything, because they know damn well there are people, elected officials, who facilitated that seditious attack on Capitol Hill on January 6th. Why aren't they going after these elected officials that participated in that seditious attack? So if you want to use the term federal involvement, there were federal cops who moved the barricades aside and allowed them in. So I don't understand that question, was there a federal involvement? But, he went on this whole thing, so he talked about COVID. I'm not going to talk about COVID, because that's not why we're here today. But he mentioned something about food prices going up. The food prices are going up because the wealthy people that I'm telling you about are making the food prices go up. You think it's an accident those ships are sitting out there in the harbor waiting for you? Fuel prices Allow me to enlighten you, brother. OPEC decides the price of oil. The United States is not a member, nor has it ever been a member of OPEC. So Biden has no control over the price of oil. I'm not a Biden fan. I didn't vote for Biden. I'm not on here to show to promote Biden. What I'm trying to stop is for us to be unprepared, because this civil war is going to kick off. So before we go any further, for those out there who may want to know about a bug-out bag, because I don't get paid for this, I give all my information free of charge. While Muhammad in D.C. talking to smack, anybody who wants to get the information, just find me, Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101. It doesn't matter whether it's the group site or the fan page site, for like a better term, and I will send you the information what everybody should have at home. We don't even have to worry about a civil war. Right now in Washington, D.C. and Dumfries area in Virginia, you got people sitting on the damn freeway who's been in traffic for 12, 14, 18 hours. I bet they would wish they had a bug-out bag in the car with them, because that's what I recommend. One at home, one in your car, and one in your workplace or at your children's school. Because we all live in an area where there's a tornado, a hurricane, flooding. We should all be prepared to, right now, Mr. Nelson, I told Mr. Nelson right before the show today, up the hill from me is Arrowhead Lake, Lake Arrowhead. They haven't had electricity for more than 10 days. But those white folks up there, guess what? They got their backup generators. They got their bug-out bags. They got their survival kits. They got their guns. They got their knives. Most people don't even know that they don't have any electricity because they're not up there whining about it. You folks living in the city, your electricity turned up for 2 hours, man, and you act like the world's going to end because you don't get the internet. These folks don't have any internet. They're off the grid right now. Seriously.
All right.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, we got to take a short break. And as the big show continues to roll on from Radio 1's flagship station, we're on FM 95.9 and AM 1450, WOL, where information is power. Thanks for rolling with us, folks. I guess he's Mark from Anaheim. As most of you know, Mark's not his real name. He's not from Anaheim, but he's got a lot of information he wants to share with us. Put in a question for him if you're on hold, 800-450-7876. That's the number to call if you got the question. Let's go to line 5. Howard's calling us from Los Angeles. Howard, your question for Mark from Anaheim.
Oh, sorry, Mark. I was going to say something offline, but you brought back memory lane. You talking about Elvis Younger and Adioto and Sam Yorty. I was a young man and teenager then. But you kind of scared me, Mark. You know, because you're right. This is what you've been talking about for the longest, and I've been listening to you for the longest. And we got to get ourselves together. And I got to get my bug-out bags. I got a couple around here, but I got to, reinvent or put some more stuff in it. But anyway, keep on talking that stuff because it's not stuff. You talking, you get given a real fact. And we got to be prepared. And a lot of people were talking about this over here. Malcolm was talking about this. Elijah Muhammad was talking about all this happening. So we got to do this. We got to get together. We got to come together as people and look out for each other. But next time we come on, I don't know what it's going to be. I'll ask my question, okay? Because I don't want you to get offline and stuff. And I remember you as an LAPD officer. I remember you as the Sergeant Harlan. You made a big change, so I would recognize you. I barely recognized you until I saw you at Sergeant Harlan's vigil. But keep on talking, Mark. These people don't understand that. One thing about me and you together, you came to my section at the hospital, that we were talking about stuff like this. And you were impressed with my knowledge, and I was interested in what you had to say. And I'm still interested in what you got to say. And keep on there. Don't worry about this.
All right. Howard, we got some... Yeah, thanks, Howard. There was another question. You want to comment on anything he said?
Yeah, okay. So he brings up Latasha Hollins. So while Muhammad is worried about me and my Vaseline, while most of you folks were recovering from New Year's Eve or still asleep, I was down in the hood because January 1st, New Year's Day, if Latasha Hollins was still alive, that was her birthday. So I was down in the hood paying my respects. First I went to where she was murdered. Now the liquor store is long gone. And then afterwards I went over to Alden Sutton Park because Alden Sutton Park, they have a big mural there for her. So I went and paid my respect to Latasha Hollins because most people are still thinking that Rodney King was the reason for what kicked off here in L.A. in 1992 when actually it was about Latasha Harlins and so many other black folks who were needlessly murdered, and their murders were not sufficiently addressed in our so-called justice system. Now, one of the things, in addition to the bug-out bag, what I've been trying to tell listeners for a long time, stop putting all your personal business on social media. Stop disrespecting your family. Howard talks about coming together. How can we come together as a community when we're disrespecting the people who have our same last names? Okay? I have been trying to give you folks some advice on how to help thwart this situation. We've gotten to the point now, Mr. Nelson, where people don't even come home for dinner because they can't even sit across from each other and have a conversation. Hell, we can't even have a conversation on this radio show because somebody's going to call in and talk about Vaseline. Now, I don't know if he's a plant. I don't care if he was a plant. The point is the damage is done. Because somebody out there is listening to him. And you know, Mr. Nelson, what's ironic is how you and I will have a conversation. Well, you and I have lots of conversations. And so many of the people who listen to this radio show, who are so down with the hood, guess what, folks? We see you on those other sites that support Trump. We see your names on there. So we know who you're really down with. Let's go on, sir.
800-450-7876. Anthony's in New York. He's on line 6. Anthony, your question for Mark.
Hey, Mark. I definitely understand why you're so
frustrated.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I was just gonna say real quick that I definitely understand why you're so fierce and heated tonight because it's a saying: if you aren't angry, you don't know what's going on. But I have a bunch of questions. I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'll bring it down to only 2. You were talking about the local elections a lot. Are you familiar with the local election in Buffalo, New York, with India Walton, where she beat the incumbent mayor of 16 years, and she almost got in, but the Republicans started to back them, and they started really putting these ads out and calling her a socialist, and she ended up losing. But do you know about that?
Yeah, you know what, brother, what's really sad about that, because I told Mr. Nelson about this, not only did that sister almost beat the incumbent, but she was getting no support from the Democratic National Committee.
Right.
Okay, so I guess she was one of the people. They're one of their chosen ones. It's kind of like when Bernie. Now, I'm not a Bernie Sanders fan either, but I'm just saying when Bernie Sanders won every county in West Virginia, they still gave it to Hillary Clinton. Now that's on the national level. But I was sad because this sister was running, and she was doing a good job running against this incumbent, and she was not getting the support she should have gotten from. Just like the Republicans started funneling money to get that incumbent back in the office, they should have been doing the same thing on the other side for her.
Right, and there's a section of Buffalo called South Buffalo where, it's mostly, I guess there's 2 mostly white areas. You got North Buffalo, you got South Buffalo, but she lost those areas because they started saying, about the defund the police and stuff like that. But the saddest part is that you have these black areas, that's like the east side of Buffalo, and they're so poor, but it's like she may have won 1 or 2 little areas, maybe even 3, but for the most part, even the black community was split. So it didn't turn out good. And I was really behind her. But that leads me into my next question. You mentioned Bernie. As far as the Democrats, do you whoever on the Republican side runs, DeSantis or Trump, who do you see them putting against Trump or DeSantis? Because I don't see Biden or Harris winning.
Brother, I'll make this short. I'm never going to lie to you. If Donald Trump ran for president right now, he would win. Because you have a lot of black people out there voting for him, too. Especially all these black businessmen, because all they care about is making money. Right. They want somebody in office who's going to get rid of the government rules and regulations so they can make money, especially as they go into the cryptocurrency. all about making money. Money. Greed is good.
Yeah,
so a lot of black folks, we sit here and talk black and white, but I'm telling you, because I don't care. I'll give you a good example. You take Roscoe's Waffle and Chicken. Go support a black-owned business. First of all, he doesn't even own it anymore. Now, Snoop Dogg tried to come in and help the brother out, but Snoop Dogg said, you got to put my name on it. Well, he didn't want Snoop Dogg's name on it, so he went to white folks up there in the area where you live. That's who owns Roscoe's Waffle and Chicken. And the brother, well, he said, come support the black people. They got sued by black folks for discrimination because he's hiring Latinos. And if that's not bad enough, white woman comes to me laughing because the brother thinks she's white, she's up in Ojai, which is an exclusive area, so she must be a Republican, and he's bragging to her how he's a Trump supporter. This white woman couldn't wait to come back and tell me, you know, this guy who Roscoe's Waffle and Chicken, he's a Trumpster. And like I said before, all these folks who keep pretending like they're down with the hood, they ain't down with the hood. They're down with their wallets. It's all about what's in it for me. That's that Ayn Rand mentality. What's in it for me, brother? So I feel you're
bringing Hillary up again, Mark. You know, it's almost like
nobody's bringing up Hillary. No, stop. Nobody's bringing up Hillary. That's the right wing putting up propaganda. There's nobody from the Democratic side that's bringing Hillary up. That's another example of how they're confusing the masses. But I'm glad you asked that because maybe people needed to hear that.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Anthony. I'm glad you cleared that up because there's so much propaganda that's out there and people are picking it up and they don't do their research.
In 1981, Ronald Reagan's campaign manager was William Casey. William Casey later on was CIA director. Now, he's an OSS boy, too. Now, of course, before he testified in Iran-Contra, he had a convenient brain seizure and died and never testified. He's not the only one, by the way. But why am I mentioning William Casey? He said in 1981, we will know that we have won when everything they believe is false. That's a direct quote from William Casey. And that's basically where we are now. It's getting so difficult, I can't even figure out when I'm looking at a so-called legitimate news story whether it's honest or not. But see, I'm retired. I got time to do this. Most of these folks, man, they're working. That's why I try to provide you all with information, because I know you don't have time to do the research that I've been doing. I don't come on this show and talk about something unless I have personal knowledge or I've thoroughly researched it so much I can come up with no other conclusion. The sad thing is Dick Gregory is gone. Because what Muhammad and these other folks don't know, while you guys are out there listening to Dick Gregory was my front man. Not everything, but much of what Dick Gregory was sharing with you folks, he got from me. Because he didn't want me to get in trouble. And he's gone now. And I'm not coming out there because you know what? I already learned most folks don't even want to be saved. They'd rather have some excuse to call in like Muhammad and attack somebody who's trying to make a difference. So guess what? I enjoy my retirement. I'll sit back and watch and let the city burn.
All right, we're coming up on a break, and then we got some more folks who want to talk to you. Folks, you want to join this conversation? We're the Mark from Anaheim. Reach out to us. Our number is toll-free. It's also worldwide. It's 800-450-7876. Let's take the break and come back and speak with Mark right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. 800-450-7876. Speak to Mark from Anaheim. Have your questions ready? Let's go to line 3. Sylvia's calling from the district. Sylvia, your question for Mark.
Hi. Mark, I have a question, actually a couple of questions. One is it true that even though many of the states are passing laws that are
Sylvia, you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Your question, yeah, we can't have dead air. Come, please.
I'm sorry. Since they're passing the laws, is there a chance that there's an overall federal law that can overturn all of those laws in the states?
What laws are you referring to, ma'am?
The ones all of the laws that say you have to be able to do specific things.
Are you referring to voting laws?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have a second question, ma'am?
do you think is the real reason that Trump ran for president and wants to run again?
Okay. All right, the first thing, as far as the voting laws, and this is indirectly related to what happened on January 6th, so I'll be glad to handle her questions here. What you have in this country, we used to have what was called the League of Women Voters. Now, they weren't always 100% honest either. But once the League of Women Voters were removed from counting the votes, things got real interesting in this country, especially in the 90s, and of course after Al Gore ran against George Bush. I mean, that one was so obvious that they had to bring the Supreme Court in to make sure Bush got the election. So states handle voting. You have federal laws that govern. I'll give you a good example. Donald Trump appointed DeJoy as the Postmaster General. Why is he still Postmaster General? Because Postmaster General, the first thing he did was, you cannot transport mail by air anymore. Are you aware of that?
No, I didn't know that.
That's why your mail, folks, is late. I went to a restaurant. Well, it's owned by a former Marine. I went to this Marine's restaurant in Downey. This is 9:30 at night, folks. And there's a brother coming in from the Postal Service delivering the mail at 9:30 at night.
That's crazy.
There are people delivering the mail on Saturdays because DeJoy makes them transport all mail by trucks. That's what's going on. And DeJoy is a truck owner. Gee, no conflict of interest, nepotism, or cronyism. That's what's going on in this country, folks. So when the sister asked this question about voting, if DeJoy owns trucking companies, and if DeJoy is the Postmaster General as we go into the midterm elections in November, could you see areas that are predominantly likely to vote for Democrats, all of a sudden that mail is not delivered in time to be counted? Could you see mail getting lost that happened to come from certain areas? They're already setting it up, and Biden and Harris aren't doing a damn thing about it.
I thought DeJoy was...
I'm sorry?
I was saying, I'm sorry. I thought DeJoy was removed from the position that he was in with the post office.
Who replaced him?
Well, now that I'm not sure about.
Nobody replaced him. DeJoy is the Postmaster General right now. Seriously.
Oh.
Okay? So what I'm saying to you, in fact, the Postal Service is getting ready, if you folks out there don't know this, the Postal Service right now is getting ready to hire something like 110,000 people, including tractor-trailer drivers. And you're going to get, I don't think it's going to be long-term permanent, but the money they're offering right now, it's pretty decent pay. But to answer your second question, why is Trump running? Because he's a narcissist. Trump loves nobody more than Trump loves himself, and he loves the attention. And that's why he's going crazy, because with him not in office, he's starving for attention. And when they started taking him off the social media sites, it really bugged them. I'm checking right now, ma'am, as I'm talking to you. DeJoy is still the Postmaster General.
Oh, okay.
So I hope that answers your
thank
question.
You.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. 800-450-7876. Ron is reaching out to us. He's in West Palm Beach, Florida. Ron is on line 4. Ron, what's your question for Mark?
Hey, guys. Thank you for taking my call, Mark. Thank you, as always. I'm still dealing with COVID-like symptoms. It's been a week and a half, so anyone who thinks COVID is a joke, it's not. And it's
anybody who thinks COVID is a joke, and since I was talking today about Capitol Hill and how more cops were injured at Capitol Hill since 9/11, what do you think was the #1 killer of cops in this country last year?
COVID.
By far. Cops getting shot, killed in car accidents, dying from heart attacks, or being overweight doesn't even come close. By far, it's COVID. And Mr. Nelson, as I'm talking to you right now, there are 600 LAPD and LA Fire Department personnel at home with COVID. But I'm sorry, brother, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that because DeSantis is doing a horrible job. here in Florida with COVID, and he's denying everything, of course. And I just don't see how he's going to run for president against Trump. And if that happens, then Trump is going to eat him alive, in my opinion. Because Trump, you know, once...
No, brother. I never said that he was going to run against Trump. You have to understand how this works. Trump was in New York City. You have a sister in New York, a strong black sister, who was going to go after Trump. So Trump fled to Florida because she knew that DeSantis will not extradite Trump back to New York. Okay? Trump can very well run for Congress in the November election and end up being Speaker of the House and impeach Biden and Harris. You're assuming that these guys can go in the White House the way they normally do. They could end up, folks, I'm just telling you, everything I'm telling you is legal fact. Everything that Trump and all his cronies did to try to overthrow the election was 100% legal, except for the fact that they used physical violence on Capitol Hill. Now, trust me, within the next few days, you're going to actually see somebody from the Trump camp that's going to present that case to the Senate committee. I'm not saying I agree with it, folks. I'm just telling you, if you study civics, if you study U.S. government, if you study U.S. history, and I taught all of them, I'm telling you, everything Trump did, no matter how you don't like it, it was legal. Even calling up these people and saying, hey, find me some votes, okay? I'm just telling you, if you go back and look at the way it happened in the election in 1876 in this country, it has been done before. And Trump and his cronies know that because they're constitutionalists. They pride themselves on knowing exactly how the Constitution works. You may very well have Trump as the Speaker of the House. They end up replacing Biden and Harris with DeSantis as the interim president until they have a special election. It could happen.
Ron, you have a follow-up question?
Yes. What I was saying is I also have my bug-out bag. I've had a bug-out bag for about 5 years now. I go through it all the time. I make sure there's Twinkies in there, wipes, etc. So I am prepared for what's going to happen.
And I'm glad you bring that up, brother, because here's the thing. For those of you who do have emergency kits, for a better term, because I don't like that term bug out either, make sure like every 2 years or so you go through that and replace stuff, because some of those things do have expiration dates and shelf lives on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's correct. But I wanted to speak hyperbolic. If you were president today, and with all this, what happened in January 6th, and you were Merrick Garland, who are the top heads that you would go after to stop from what happened last year? Like, who are the top dogs that you would go after?
All right. So when I saw Biden appoint Garland, I already knew they weren't serious. Garland's dream in life is to get on the Supreme Court. There's no way in the world he is going to go after the Republicans, because they're going to be the ones who later on decide whether he gets on the Supreme Court. You're not going to see Garland aggressively go after the Republicans, because that's their Now, I'll say there's another option. If you folks don't know this yet, there's an agenda right now, even though I don't think it's going to get passed, to add 4 more people to the Supreme Court. Are you aware of that, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, we've discussed that before.
Well, no, I'm saying this is something that's going on right now. There's a committee right now that's putting in for 4 more people to be added to the Supreme Court to expand the court. If they do that, and Biden is able to appoint somebody, then you might see Garland go after these folks. But I don't see that getting passed. And if Garland wants to get on the Supreme Court, he's going to have to basically suck up to the Republicans, because they're still going to end up having a deciding vote on whether he gets on the Supreme Court. So
that's
to answer your question hypothetically, if I was the president of the United States and I was taught well by my Nazi mentors, I would declare martial law. And Biden can do it, because Obama was given that power with SARS. We have a pandemic, declare martial law, and then go after all these damn traitors that were on Capitol Hill on January 6th. But that's if I was the president. You're not going to see Biden do that.
All right, Ron, you got a follow-up real quick? All right, hold that thought there, Ron. If you have a follow-up, we got to take a short break. 800-450-7876. Mark from Anaheim is our guest. We'll take your calls after this quick break on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. This is Mark from Anaheim, and the number to call you'd like to speak to him, 800-450-7876. Before we get back to this reminder, tomorrow's Friday. Of course, you know that. And we invite you to join us. Free your mind. And that's when we say free your mind, I mean think for yourself. For our Open Phone Friday, the first for 2022, we start promptly at 4 p.m. Eastern Time right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. All right, before we let you speaking to Ron in West Palm Beach, Ron, you have a follow-up question for Mark? Ron's gone? All right, 800-450-7876. Sandra is in D.C. on line 2. Sandra, your question for Mark.
Yes, good evening, Carl and Mark. I stayed on the line because I just want to say thank you, Mark. Because I have been listening to you from day one when Carl Nelson started on WOL, and he brought you on. And I just want to thank you because you have been very informative. We've heard things we wouldn't have heard anywhere else. You've been very, very bold about it. And you always told us from day one that you would not lie to us. And you were not getting paid. And I just gathered that you had a lot of respect for not only Dick Gregory, but also for Carl Nelson. So I just want to thank you because when Carl came to WOL, I have been listening to him. And I don't listen all day long, but because I'm getting away from TV and radio. But I will cut Carl on at 4. So I want to thank you again, Mark. And I ask God to love and direct you, guide, and protect you. And that's a verse that Kathy Hughes always said on her show. And I'm Sandra from Kathy Hughes' morning show.
Thank you, sister.
Thank you, Sandra.
And by the way, Mr. Nelson, what she just said is very important because I'm going to tell you folks something, okay? When I was on LAPD, I had no less than 4 attempts on my life. But there were always people out there, most who didn't even know me, never met me, but they were always praying for me. And nothing ever happened to me. In fact, I've never wished harm on anybody, but all the folks who ever went out of their way to do something to me, something bad happened to them.
Shay, I got a tweet question for you before I take another call. Tweet says, Mark, when the Civil War, the coup, or the declaration of martial law starts, will black people who can't leave America fight back or be herded into detention centers and whatever other dread might be in our future?
Well, see, here's the problem, okay? A lot of folks, when I say Civil War, they have images of the North and South. It's not going to be that way, folks. Like I said, I had cops who I trained who are talking about putting me in their rifle sights. You're going to have brother versus brothers, sisters versus sisters, Democrat versus... It's so complicated. It's so convoluted. We have been so, disorganized. Everybody's confused today. Everybody's angry and venting their anger on somebody who's not the reason for their damn situation because you've been misdirected. The wealthy are sitting back laughing. By the way, I'll give you a good example. So here in not Beverly Hills, but over in I can't believe I just forgot the name of the city over here next to Beverly Hills. But there's a house. This house goes for $150 million. Okay, I don't think anybody listening to the show lives in $150 million. This house has 21 bedrooms and 27 bathrooms. In that house, Bel Air. These two guys burglarized the house. One got away, one got caught. The reason one got caught, he's taking a shower and smoking the guy's cigar. Now, why am I telling you all this? It also turns out whoever owned that house had 3 limousines that are fully bulletproof. These wealthy folks know what's coming down. They're buying up these old World War II, Cold War era bunkers. A lot of them are buying land in New Zealand. They don't go to LAX and get on the airplane. They have their private jets. So the truly wealthy, a lot of this is being orchestrated by them because they believe that afterwards they're going to come in and create the utopian society that they should have had all along. We're the useless eaters. While people are worried about blacks taking their jobs, Mexicans taking their jobs, women taking their jobs, it's artificial intelligence that's taking their jobs. That White Castle hamburger, I'll never eat one of those, but right out here in the LA area, White Castle hamburgers are being done by robots. Now they had one guy who used to come in and change the grease, take the the grease for the French fries. This year they now have a robot doing that too. So that even that worker's gone. That's who's replacing you, folks. Artificial intelligence. That's why and I'm going to ask Mr. Nelson this again. So, Mr. Nelson, you have a large population of people with no jobs, and those jobs are never coming back. What do you do with them?
What they're doing right now.
Well, no. What the plan is to give everybody a universal income. That's already started in Europe, and it's going to happen here too. That's why they're already getting you ready with the whole thing about don't come back to work kind of thing. And a lot of people who are used to working from home don't want to come back to the office. But you also have a lot of other people who had crappy jobs, and they were told, if you don't like this job, leave. So they did, and now those people are trying to get them back. But no, they're trying to come up with this universal minimum income for everybody. And I don't think that's going to work. But, that's one of the plans.
Yeah, I think they're trying that in LA, or they're talking about it in LA.
Yes, sir. It's already being done in some places in Europe. But thank you, guys, to get me all fired up today because I couldn't sleep. No, I haven't been able to sleep I haven't slept since the last time we did a radio show. Mr. Nelson, see, I want you folks to know something. I'm not mad at Muhammad, okay? And Mr. Nelson will tell you his conversations with me are far worse than the conversations you hear on this radio, okay? He and I get down and dirty. We don't always agree on a lot of stuff, and we talk every day because I don't have Dick Gregory to harass anymore. So I love you folks. I'm glad for Sandra calling in for that word of encouragement, but if you want to get in touch with me, find me at Mark from Anaheim, Political Sarcasm 101, because I know a lot of people aren't going to call in. I have people come up and meet me all the time who tell me that they'll never call in, but they listen to the show anytime I'm on. Listen while you can, folks, because Google owns YouTube, and Google's taking down most of the shows where I've come on as a guest because they don't want you to know the information I'm sharing with you. And once again, do your own research. And you come on, Muhammad, come back on the show and tell them that I provided some misinformation. That's what you should be arguing about. If I'm lying to you, then you have a right to come on and attack me. If not, what are we doing here? Why are we attacking each other?
Well, we got some more folks.
I'm sorry?
I got some more folks waiting for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
All right, let's go to JT on line 5. JT's in Chicago. JT, your question for Mark.
God dang, Chicago. Where the teachers said they ain't going back to work.
No, man. They fighting it up here. But look, thank you for taking my call, Mark. I've been listening to you for a while, man. I got an emergency kit. I'm ready. And it's not about being scared. It's about being prepared.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and we keep talking about when this thing going to start. And they already kicked it off.
It already kicked off. It kicked off back in 2016 when this couple from Indiana walked in and killed 2 cops in Las Vegas. They painted a swastika on their bodies and said the revolution has started. Folks, they're killing black women and Native American women left and right in this country.
It already started, man.
It's already started.
What about these laws and how they gerrymandered up in Georgia, where you won't get a Stacey Abrams, or in Texas, they doing all these turning over these abortion rights. See, they're making a move. But I got a question.
Arizona also.
My question is, have you watched that movie Bushwick? It came out 2017, so it's on Netflix, and it got Texas seceding from the Union, and they take over New York, and it start off with action, man, and the only time they push this stuff is when they're ready to make their move, right? These are no action.
And it's funny you just said that because one of Trump's former assistants, his name is Michael Anton. He's already saying, you folks in California can talk your smack, but if we start the Civil War right now, we don't think you're going to beat us from Texas.
Man, you gotta watch this movie. It's called Bushwick. They got the actor from Guardians of the Galaxy, the big guy. I can't think of his name, but they took over New York to use it as a bargaining piece. And they call it the East. It was going to be the East bargaining, the East Coast setup, or but the bargaining piece. And the whole point of that was so that Texas could do their final secession. Man, the movie laid out how this thing would look, right? Move for move. So somebody thought this thing out very well. But
of course, and Hollywood always tells you what they plan on doing.
Yeah, I encourage everybody out there. It's on Netflix. It's called Bushwick, like Bushwick, New York. It came out 2017. Watch this picture, man.
Hopefully, because it came out so long ago, maybe now I can get I can buy the DVD. You see, I don't do internet. I don't have a smartphone. I don't have I don't have any of that stuff, and I don't watch television.
You gotta watch this. But my question is pertaining to why is all these CEOs dumping these stocks? Like Elon Musk, he dumped 10% of his stocks. So something big is coming, right?
Right. What's happening? Okay, and I know we're running out of time here, Mr. Nelson. What's going to happen is this, okay? I talked about the Gilded Age. So when you look at the wealthy folks from the Gilded Age, right now the disparity between the filthy rich, actually the wealthy, and those of us below is worse today than it was prior to the stock market crash during the 1920s. Because they're doing the same thing today that they did back then by getting rid of all the regulation laws. And monopolies have come back. We're facing a major housing bubble. We're facing a major college student loan bubble. And right now with if we get into hyperinflation, once again, folks, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to prepare you. I'm not being hyperbolic here. The stock market is going to crash. That's going to make 2007, 2008 will seem like romper room compared to what we're getting ready to head for. It's going to be bad, folks. It's going to be really bad. And the banks have already set it up where they can use our money to bail themselves out if the banks go under. And that's why the banks are too big to fail. Because right now, if we allow the banks to fail, the whole system, it's all a Ponzi scheme. No, seriously, it's all a Ponzi scheme. The stock market is nothing more than the biggest damn, and everybody's into gambling. That's all the stock market is. Everybody's into gambling now, and they're into debt. So, brother, seriously, we are headed for a major economic, and I think what they're trying to do, when I say they, the Biden administration and those folks are trying to keep the system afloat until at least after the midterm elections. So somebody asked me, when's it going to happen? I don't do that. I'm just telling you, and Mr. Nelson will tell you this. I told the folks in 1990 that stock market was going to crash. And when it happened in 2007 and it crashed, Mr. Nelson listened and said, well, you did tell us. Trust me, what you saw in 2007, 2008 is nothing compared to what's going to happen, because back then you still had human beings. A lot of human beings have consciences, and we're not making bad investments with your money. They've replaced those human beings with algorithms and computers that don't ask any questions and just do what they're told to do. It's going to be bad.
JT, we're out of time. We got to go. But Muhammad just text me and apologized. So,
I love you, brother. Come on, Mr. Nelson, I love Muhammad. Come on. I needed that. I was falling asleep on you, man.
All right. We got to go. Thank you, Mark. All right, folks, stay strong, stay positive. Please stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock right here on 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
like everybody have a nice weekend. SBWG Speed, your brother from a different mother.
later, the founder of the Black Lawyers for Justice will be here. Malik Zulu Shabazz will discuss the sentencing phase of the three men convicted of killing Ahmaud Arbery, and also the civil rights and federal civil rights trial that they're facing. Attorney Shabazz will also explain the NAACP's lawsuit against Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and several others. Hearing was held today, so we'll get some information on that as well. And time permitting, Attorney Shabazz will talk about the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, which may be heading for a retrial. But to get us started, banking and financial expert Donnell Parker. Donnell, welcome back to WOL Radio.
Good afternoon, Carl. Thank you for having me on the show. Happy New Year, and this is the year for transparency.
Okay, well, let's make it one. Donnell, let's start off first with the jobless rate that came out in December. It seems like the rate went down, but except for black folks. So last I checked, the black unemployment rate was 7.1, Hispanic 4.9, whites 3.2. What's going on here? How do we read those numbers?
Well, a lot of the reports that they came out with December didn't match up, and this is the first time that the payroll report didn't meet the household report. So the Federal Reserve got conflicting, and also the stock market got conflicting on how to read both reports. So the December job report missed badly. So one of the reports saying that we're in an economic boom, and the other report show the true number of what's really going on when it comes to unemployment. Now, when we take account of unemployment, we have to recognize we should not, the American people, or especially African Americans, we should not look at the unemployment and say, like, it's 3.9, 7.1, it's good for African Americans, but they only show the total of people who are looking or working for the past 3 months. When we look at the unemployment, we have to take account of the total population of the United States, because the unemployment rate don't show the people that are missing. The people, it doesn't take account of what I call them the missing workers. It doesn't take account of the people who are neither employed or not actively seeking for a job. So that's a big gap. When you look at New York, for example, the unemployment rate for African-American men is 50%. But the unemployment rate nationally for African-Americans is close to 20-something%. So just looking at that report, we should not go by the numbers. The numbers that do not tell us the true part of the economy. Is the major gap between what they're reporting and what's actually going on.
Right. But there is some truth, though, that our folks are at the bottom of the ladder again.
Welcome to America. That traditionally, that minorities, especially African Americans, are traditionally the first one, last one hired, first one out. So some people call it LIFO, last in, first out. So yeah, so that creeps with the numbers because of sociology and psychology, systemic racism in this country. That's why our numbers are so high.
Right, and some people were saying that we don't want to work. I just don't believe that's the case, though, that our people don't want to work. I'm just not buying that. But go ahead.
That's a false pretense. That's like a negative pretense towards African Americans. Now, it depends on what job they're talking about. Who want to work in Salinas, California, as an immigrant and not benefits? Any American who understands the system, you need benefits for yourself and your family, and you want a competitive hourly rate. Who want to take something that's paid $6 an hour just to get cash, but you're not getting benefits? So what corporations have been doing since NAFTA, they've been paying people like 75% of what they used to get paid in the 80s. Then what they would say, well, I'm not going to be full benefits. I'm only going to give you 32 hours a week, or I'm going to have you come in seasonal. So it's very difficult getting full benefits. So when you change the systems compared to what happened in the 70s and 80s, when NAFTA and other companies caught on to get people cheaper or to take away their benefits, then who want to work? People need full benefits, and they need full salaries. They need a 40-hour week, not a 24-hour or 32-hour week.
And you mentioned immigration. How much is that coming to play with now they've tightened up on the immigrants coming over the border? Does this have anything to do with the unemployment rate?
No, I haven't seen them tighten on the border. I've been seeing people coming in flux. Now, what they're doing, they're shipping people back faster, but they're focusing on people with criminal convictions or They focus on, people who just got caught walking around and they found that they were immigrants. But I'm seeing immigrants coming over here in a flux because everyone's coming to America and the people with money are leaving America.
Because you mentioned some jobs that, some folks Americans won't do, the menial jobs, for example. So are those jobs still begging? Are they still looking for people for those lower end paying jobs?
Yes, they're still looking for people, but some of the immigrants are taking those positions, taking those jobs. And one of the major gaps now is in the nursing field. In the blue states, a lot of the nurses are leaving because of the mandate for the vaccine, or I would say they're labeling the vaccine, but some people call it a jab. So these workers, these nurses are leaving the blue states, going to red states, and that's a major transformation shift in the demographics. The blue states are losing population, and they're going to red states so they can keep employment.
Yeah, and then there's a talk about the great resignation of people just quitting their jobs, and mostly, baby boomers. They've had enough, and they're just, hey, I'm out. They may not even have another job lined up, but they're leaving jobs in record numbers. Is that true, or is that just talk?
That is 100% true, Carl. They are not telling the people the truth. The American people need to know the truth. Every sector during the December job report went up except one key sector, government employees. Government employees went down 12,000. The major driver of that, the baby boomers, hey, I'm retired. I'm not taking that shot. You can't tell me what to do. I'm not doing it. I'm retiring. I'm taking my retirement check and I'm leaving the government. City, state, and federal, not just one. It's city, state, and federal. 12,000 people in 1 month decided to quit my job and retire.
So you're saying without the pandemic, though, things would be much different?
Correct, Carl. Things would be a lot smoother. Everybody would be working, and people wouldn't have the time off to think about, my job is boring. I'm not making enough money. I'm underemployed. People knew they were underemployed, but when you're sitting at home for, over a year, you're sitting around with people driving Maybachs, Mercedes-Benz, people got these big houses, you still living check to check. It was like, this is time for, I can, go back for IT, or I got to find some other hustle, or I need to be an entrepreneur and try to create my own job. I'm not going to wait on someone to hire me. What can I do to make more money than what I was doing in hospitality or my current job that I had before as a school teacher?
So how are these people surviving? Do they have a savings motherlode somewhere set aside, or what? How are they making it?
Well, some are not making it. There's houses that's not being paid, and there's credit cards that's not being paid. People are moving in with each other. Some people did save up some money from maybe the PPP, or they use in their retirement, but everybody's scenario is different. There is no one-all, be-all how people are surviving. But I would say this, I am seeing some mortgages going into 90-day default, and also the credit card debt going up.
All right, since we're real estate, do you see the interest rates going up, flattening, or declining? Where do you see the interest rates going, mortgage interest rates?
I'm seeing the mortgage interest rate staying flat all the way up to maybe April. I think the Fed is going to come out and increase interest rate in between March and April. So I think by April, the mortgage interest rate will be going up a point or a half a point.
So if people are looking to refi or get that first house or whatever, they should do it right now, right? Because it's going to take a couple of months to the process to complete, right?
This is not financial advice, but if you haven't refi by now, I don't know what they're waiting on. But if you need to refi and if you have a mortgage payment in the next 5 years, this is the best time to refi. And I'm not saying refi, it's only refi the interest rate, not refi to pull money out. This is not the time to pull money out. But it's not for every scenario. But people need to do their own financial analysis. When you do your financial analysis, you will see that if you want a 3 point refi, we would have a better chance of getting our refi, we would have a better chance of getting a refi or modification because what these mortgage companies are doing, they're blaming on a system systematically on purpose so they can say it's a system error and not a discrimination error, even though they get fined that it was discrimination because a lot of Hispanics and African Americans are not getting a modification. They're blaming the system, but who controls the system, who writes the system, control the outcome. So in the history, we have seen Quicken Loan out of Detroit, Michigan, to find a way to come together. And I'm saying because of gentrification. Now, what I'm stating is that we have to decide as a people, chaos, like Martin Luther King said, we're going to live separate and have less power, or we're going to have to find a way to come together. And I'm saying by 2028 to 2030, we're going to see that we're going to have to come together. Living all separate, you know, in Oregon and Washington and California, sooner or later, we watch what the Asians have done and what the Jewish community have done. They build community. Living separate in all these different places, we're going to have to give up some of our so-called history and go back to the South.
All right. With that, we're going to cap it right there. Folks want to reach you, Darnell, how do they do so?
Yes, they can reach me at area code 571-441-2710. Again, area code 571-441-2710. Thank you for having me, Carl.
Thank you, Darnell, and thank you for all the information you shared with us today. All right, folks, we're getting ready to switch over to our next guest, who happens to be attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz. Malik is the founder of the Black Lawyers for Justice. Malik, welcome back to WOL Radio.
Hey, Brother Carl Nelson. How you doing, and to your audience?
We're well. How are you doing, sir? These are serious questions when you ask people how they're doing these days. So how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, as we all are. We all are health alerts because COVID is sweeping America, so I'm happy to be healthy. And I could say that I am happy because there is some accountability being afforded to racists who killing our people. So, I mean, there is some good news, and that is that there is some justice out here in America in this very volatile racial environment.
Yeah, because you were at the Ahmaud Arbery trial and also the sentencing, and 3 of the men, they were convicted, but only 2 got no parole, life with no parole. 1 of them didn't. What happened?
What happened was these were strong sentences, very honestly. Travis McMichael, the son, he's 35 years old, got life in prison I think, plus 20 years, no parole at all. So he's in for the rest of his life. There is no death penalty in Georgia State. Father Gregory McMichael, he's 65. He got life plus 10, no parole. Many thought that they would get some parole. William Bryan, who did the filming and drove the truck behind, got life, but he can get parole in 30 years. Well, I think he's 50. So this was a crushing blow, honestly, to these white defendants in this majority white county being pursued by a white prosecutor with a white judge on the bench over a black man running in southern Georgia, shot running while he was black. These are some historic occurrences. They are.
Oh, hold that door right there, because we want to get into what's the next phase of this situation with the civil rights trial and the federal civil rights trial. Because some people are asking why another trial since they've already got life. I'll let you explain that on the other side, folks. You want to join this conversation with Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz? Reach out to us 800-450-7876. Gets you in. Your calls will be next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL, where information is power.
Listen to the Carl Nelson Show now on our free mobile app.
And thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is the founder of the Black Lawyers for Justice. His name is he is an attorney, Malik Zulu Shabazz. like to speak to him, 800-450-7876. And before we left, discussing the, I won't call it the Ahmaud Arbery trial because he wasn't on trial, but the 3 men who were convicted of running down and gunning down Ahmaud. Now they've been sentenced. Most of the 2 out of 3, there were no parole, life in prison. But now they're also facing some other trials, the civil rights trial and the federal civil rights trial. Why are they facing these other trials when they've been essentially sent away for the rest of their lives?
Well, because they're supposed to have an interest. They finally acted on their interest. They're supposed to have an interest in prosecuting cases such as these where a person is killed or harmed or assaulted or kidnapped on the basis of their race. And I think the credit will go to the public pressure and the advocacy in this case for finally getting the government to do its job in this case. This is a separate set of offenses. Number one is just hypothetically, what if all of the defendants in the state case, what if all of their convictions were just overturned? They were all overturned, and they were able to gain a new trial. Well, convictions in the federal case would ensure that they will remain behind bars in case the rare chance that that happens. Okay, but moreover, the government is supposed to be prosecuting persons for crimes that are committed and are motivated by race, and there's evidence, strong evidence in this case that Travis McMichaels and Gregory McMichaels and the white men who killed Ahmaud Arbery, that they did it with racial motivation. When they called it to the 911, the comments were racial. There's a black man running down the street. And afterwards, there's an investigator that investigated the case, and it came out in the pretrial, but not the trial, but in the pretrial, stated that his investigation found that Travis McMichael talked about this effing dead, Nigger, that he used a racial slur at the scene. It came out in pretrial, but it wasn't used by the prosecution at the trial. I guess they didn't think it was necessary. But anyway, this is evidence that there was a racial motivation and that these were hate crimes, and so they could face additional years in prison beyond the ones they have now. And most of us are not in objection at all. Sure, civil rights activists are happy that finally the federal government is doing what it's supposed to do, because it's neglected to do what it's supposed to do in the hate crimes area for many years.
Now, the other trial, because they're facing other charges, another trial, a civil trial, is that his parents, are they suing these 3 men?
I don't know about this. I don't know if I'm not aware of them filing a civil suit against the McMichaels. I'm not aware of that. I think they have some type of civil litigation, but I'm not aware of them pursuing civil suit against them, And it doesn't appear that any of these have assets. For example, their private criminal attorneys in the state case will not be their attorneys in the federal case. They will all have public defenders. So, I don't know about them suing the individuals. They should. Their civil lawyers should sue them, but these guys have faced a rough ride, For the Christians in the audience, the Bible says when Satan casts out Satan, how can his kingdom stand? Khalid Muhammad used to tell us that when you see white people enacting harsh justice on other white folks in situations like this, that would be the fulfillment of that scripture. We were down there just at that courthouse. We were down there at that courthouse, Black Lawyers for Justice, the New Black Panther Party, and a whole host of black self-defense organizations from around the country. And it was a very strong atmosphere there. And again, this is a trial that has made history on certain levels, and is a victory for activists. have to remember that in the very beginning there was black militia and black self-defense and Black Panther type operations and a group called the NFAC. And they all, because of putting pressure, paramilitary type pressure, on those neighborhoods where the McMichaels were living, was one of the reasons why this case, which was not indicted, eventually was indicted. It was hardcore, grassroots, black power pressure at the root of some of these actions. And this is an important factor as we move to the future.
800-450-7876. Angela's joining us on line 1, calling from the district. Angela, you're on with Attorney Shabazz.
Yes, Carl. Yeah, this is Angela. I was calling in reference to, the gentleman had said something about the most important city is the Vatican. When we chose the Pope, we also restructured the banking system there. If you go to the Vatican today, it's full of homelessness and poverty. And for him to say that, he was being inaccurate. But I'm glad to hear, Brother Malik, you never met me for our consultation. And hopefully you'll honor that meeting so we can discuss the issues that I'd spoken with you about earlier. But I'm saying we have some gifted Black African-American women who are in a position to be president. And one of them is Congresswoman Barbara Lee. I'm a big fan of hers. And she's one of the ranking members up there. She's been
right.
up there.
Angela, I'm going to let you go because we're veering off topics quite a bit. So I thank you for your call, though. 800-450-7876. Attorney Malik, I got to ask you about the NAACP's lawsuit against Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and some others. What is the essence of that lawsuit? Because I understand they had a hearing today.
Okay. Can we get to that on the other side of the break? Is that possible? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Well, let's finish up on the McMichaels because the question is about the federal civil right. You said that we should, but some people were saying that it's just a waste of taxpayers' money since they're already going to be confined to jail. But they can appeal those sentences. Am I correct in saying that?
They can appeal the sentences on the state level, and I think Black people that are interested in civil rights and even human rights would be for the prosecution of hate crimes because it's rare. We all know they occur much, much, much more than they're ever prosecuted. And so when those rare occasions occur, we want that to happen because that is supposedly how the system works. And taxpayers' money is being wasted on things like constantly harping on January 6th. I mean, how much is that wasted? You know what I mean? And so I wouldn't say that there's just no mercy. Black people should remain or keep a hard line. And the family wants the hate crime charges, and we want the hate crime charges. And it was many years ago in 2007 when Black Lawyers for Justice helped get some of the first state crime charges added to the case of the racist rape of Megan Williams. There was none. It wasn't happening on the state level until then. So it's important. Everybody must know it's important for hate crimes to be prosecuted as a backup sentence, and also because it's happening and the government's supposed to be doing its job. In this case, one of the rare instances where it does.
800-450-7876. Michael's on line 3. He's in Maryland. Michael, you're on with Attorney Shabazz.
Yes, good afternoon. First, I want to say, to put this in the atmosphere right now, happy birthday to Khalid Muhammad, whose birthday is on the 12th. Now, I want to basically give a solution and ask your solution to what we need to do to help our situation. Now, we got to do something to get fathers back in these children's lives. Number one, the child support system. what lawyers do you recommend? Because many of our brothers are not getting any justice. And that system has a lot of brothers by the throat, and they're making it very difficult for fathers to be involved in their children's life, even when they're in prison. So that's number one. And then number two, our brother Quasi has asked this question many times, and Dr. Leen Muhammad. Where are our lawyers? Like yourself, we know you out here working hard, but where are our lawyers that's willing to stand up for the people that is against the vaccine? They are totally taking our rights away. And like Dave Chappelle say, when you take a man's livelihood away from him, that is akin to killing him. So this is what's going on. And those are my two questions. Where are your help, the lawyers' help, like Attorney Alton Maddox, in this time right now for the pandemic of the brothers who won't take the vaccine and the sisters who won't, and getting some kind of loyal advice?
Michael, your phone's breaking up on us.
Okay.
So we're going to let you go. I think Attorney Shabazz remembers the questions. Attorney Malik, you remember the questions?
Yes, sir. Thank you for your question, Brother Michael. And I want to address the fundamental point to all the young brothers who are out there, or anybody who's out there. The caller's question bespeaks the need for black people to go to law school. And it bespeaks to the urgency for black males to go to law school. When I was in law school at Howard University years ago, it was dominated by women. And over the years, the number of black men going to law school has dwindled. And we didn't really see the importance of law, I guess, until recently. And now we've been, so we need more black attorneys, brother. I need to be able to call off 30 to law and to go to UDC Law School or any law school online by any means necessary, because we need lawyers fighting. Number two is on the child support question. Every black man that's under the sound of my voice must fight. I don't know what kind of lawyers you have, or you may not be able to afford it, but you have to fight to put yourself in the right position. Many litigants or many parties in these courts don't have attorneys, and it's kind of set up that way. And so I would recommend you in the Washington, D.C. area, Jeanette, Geanett, Henry. She's great. And but other than that, what you have to do as a father is establish you a solid record. If you want to see your child, establish a record that you've been all doing everything you can to see your child. If you want to, you have to have a solid record. So when you get ready to go to mediation and whatnot, you have evidence that you've done all you can, and that it's somebody else that's blocking. That it's that it's the mother of your child that's blocking you, and you have to establish a solid record. And although I don't take these cases, I'm busy with police cases and civil rights cases, some of which I'll talk about today. Certainly, I can point y'all in the right direction. My number is 301-513. 5445 301-513-5445. I can, in my email is attorney.shabazz@yahoo.com, and I'll be more than free to give you some tips. I may not be able to take your family law case, but I can give a black man some tips of how to see his child. But number one, be determined to see your child and establish a track record.
All right, hold that thought right there, because we're going to take a short break and let you finish responding to these other questions on the other side. Folks who want to join us, 800-450-7876. Speak to Attorney Malik, who will take your calls next, right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power.
Nelson Show on 1450 and 95.9. At WOLDCnews.com.
Thank you for staying with us, folks. Our guest is the founder of the Black Lawyers for Justice. His name is Malik Zulu Shabazz. He's an attorney, of course. I'd like to speak to him, 800-450-7876. Brother Malik, did you finish responding to Michael's question, or do you need some more time?
Your brother Michael asked the final question about where are our attorneys in terms of the vaccine. Honestly, it appears that the legal defenses against mandatory vaccines, that war is being covered. It doesn't appear to be covered by black attorneys. I will admit that. But it appears that the more conservative attorneys all the way up to the Supreme Court have fought the vaccine mandate war well. I don't think there's a legal gap in the defenses in that area. They fought against mandatory federal vaccines and had that defeated in the Supreme Court. They recently had the business requirements for vaccines struck down. There was talk that all airlines, that you wouldn't be able to fly, and so I think there's some adequate defenses going on, albeit by white conservatives, and so, that's on that. And once again, brother, there's a lack of black attorneys to fight any number of wars, gentrification, vaccination, extermination. There's a severe lack of black lawyers, and the only thing I can structurally say is that we all need to see and understand that Carter G. Woodson wasn't wrong when he talked about getting your education and putting it to the service of our people. Getting our education, putting it to the service of our peoples.
We had the black doctors in here, and they're saying that there's a lack of students, black students, going to med school. Are you seeing the same thing as far as law school is concerned?
Absolutely. With the higher education and graduate schools of law and medicine is where we have slacked off and where our value system has fallen down, and now we need it. See, we need all those things that we were taught at Howard University, and I don't know, it's a lot of reasons why it's happening, the social decay, lack of fathers, bling, athletics, however you want to chalk it up. But the bottom line to it is that our race now needs lawyers and doctors and engineers. We know a lot of the engineers even are coming from Africa and other where they are African brothers and sisters. But the technology sector is being dominant. It has blacks, but not necessarily the blacks from America. And so, it's just an urgency that we need to hear this message and correct with our youth and our children right away to force them back into just education and graduate schools that will eventually provide lawyers and doctors, scientists and engineers for our people. We need it desperately.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the NAACP's lawsuit now. They're suing Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, and some other folks. And I understand they had a hearing today, but most folks don't remember that they actually filed a lawsuit. Can you explain what's going on?
Well, the NAACP filed a civil suit, alleging that Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani were responsible for the actions and the violence on January 6th. And the basic report on that is that it's stuck in court. It's stuck in court, and it's set for a hearing, and it has been challenged by some serious motions to dismiss. And we have to follow these motions to dismiss. And I guess we also want to follow how serious the NAACP is about pursuing that litigation. I guess at a fundamental level, we should applaud, my brother, that the NAACP did file that suit and apply whatever legal pressure they did. They could say that they threw a punch in the fight. And that's important for NAACP to throw a punch in the fight. We want the National Bar Association. We don't usually only hear about one NBA. But we want to hear about the National Bar Association positions on these matters and their litigation on these matters. That's an important force here that I think is utilized here. Currently is headed by Judge Carlos Moore, my longtime good brother, freedom fighter from Mississippi. But overall, as an institution, I would say that the National Bar Association, we should look forward to more punches from them in the overall fight, although great individuals come out of that great organization.
In that particular case, though, who's the aggrieved? Who's because they have to have someone what they call, I guess you guys call standing. So somebody has to file a complaint. The NAACP has to find one of these, I guess, lawmakers who considered was maligned or hurt by the attack on January 6th. Have they selected one, or just going to use the Congressional Black Caucus? Do you know?
You know, I need to examine exactly who the plaintiffs are. It's already been filed, so I have to gain a greater understanding of who the plaintiffs are, whether lawmakers or persons that was injured or some other interest. That would be something I would have to report back on. But I know that they jumped in this civil rights fight basically on behalf of as an attack. Sometimes it's the legal bully pulpit of tying up Trump and his lawyers and holding them accountable. I can tell you that regardless to who the plaintiff is. And also, I got to tell you, I don't think that the lawsuit is going anywhere. My reading of this lawsuit, it doesn't appear that this civil suit is going anywhere. Trump has some heavyweight lawyers, and the connection, the civil connection for him between civil liability and what happened there is largely blocked by his claims of freedom of speech, and therefore I don't personally think civil-wise Trump has a lot to worry about. Honestly speaking on this, as much as I denounce this attack on the Capitol, I don't even think Trump has too much politically to worry about, honestly. I think that the media and the Democratic Party are beating a dead horse, honestly, on this January 6th issue, and I don't think it's hurting Donald Trump. I think that's just my analysis.
Even though he wasn't,
I don't think it's hurting him.
Right. Even though he wasn't president, so he doesn't have immunity. You still believe that?
Well, I mean, this is like in boxing. This is like a wide right hook. Just a wild punch to see whether or not, in the course of these congressional investigations, whether or not Trump would be found to be have probable cause to have committed a criminal act, and therefore if that would have happened, and that would have barred him from running from office again. But that's like a wild punch here, and that's not likely to happen. He has good defenses here legally in terms of the subpoenas and so forth. And so, therefore, it's a political attack now to see that if we can keep drumming up January 6th and talking about it, well, that will keep him as a political pariah. Problem is, it's not working. It's the same thing the Democrats did in 2016. But the problem is right here is that the Democratic performance, Joe Biden's performance, Kamala Harris' performance, is nothing that the Democrats can tout. They don't have that to tout. They can't use that, so they want to use the anti-Trump strategy. Instead of being able to say Joe Biden has done this, Kamala Harris has done that. This is a sad case for Democrats. So the problem here is that the Republicans are set to sweep the midterm elections, both House and the Senate. That's the bad news for Democrats. And Joe Biden's poll ratings, he looked like a skydiver jumping out of an airplane with his poll ratings. And I hate to say it because I don't like it, but it appears that Donald Trump will be in good position to run for president of the United States of America once again due to the Democrats not being able to win, effectively govern, and win the population.
All right. If we follow your premise, then what do we do as a people?
Oh, Lord, I want to keep repeating what we keep saying every 4 years, that a harsher right-wing government would come, and that this is the time for black people to do for self, and this is the time that the scriptures say that we will come out and do for our own, and that we will be repatriation and nationalization. And, I would have to stick to my teachings and my doctrine that it's time for black power, black nationalism. Of course, I will always say that. And we will always say that can't keep going around in circles. You know, we gotta, once Donald Trump and the Republicans get in, and we got to gear up for the next elections, to the next round of Democrats. You know, black people are tired of that. And she's my sister from Howard University. And she's my alumni. I'm reluctant to criticize my alumni. But Kamala Harris is a classic example of how riling and hyping and pumping black people up to vote, telling them that either the Democratic Party or a black Democratic president or vice president will make a substantial difference. I think this political go-round with Ms. Harris proves that all of this is a folly, all of this is fantasy, and that we have to get off the Democratic train. You know, I mean, we may not have built another train, but this cycle cannot continue, and to believe in what the Democratic Party is offering us, and certainly not the Republican Party. I mean,
all right, hold that thought right there, because it's important, because we keep having these discussions, and you know, we're always searching for solutions. So if not them, I'd like you to tell us what's your thought? Is it separation? Is it a black independent party? Let us know. We're going to take a short break, and I'll let you respond to those questions next on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. For those folks, we have the founder of the Black Lawyers for Justice with us. He's attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz. And before we left, you were saying the things that we all know, and it's talked about quite a bit. So my thing is about solutions. So what do we do? What's the next move?
Well, I think what we do is we need to return to the value system and return to the message of our prophets that have been revealed to us. We just have failed to buckle down and listen. And a lot of the matrix and messages and social media coming at us can constantly take us off track. But, you know, the word that God has given us is not changed. You know, that the practices and the program of Marcus Garvey, the messages of Carter G. Woodson, the examples of Booker T. Washington, George Washington Carver, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the fighting examples of Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, Huey Newton, Khalid Muhammad, and Louis Farrakhan, that these are the best methods that we must focus on, that black nationalism, that black power is that remedy that we keep failing to embrace. I mean, at this point in time, I mean, yes, that all it's the same message. All our efforts should be on improving the black economy and supporting black businesses. And we should be fighting like heck to have an economy of our own and to try to recapture the spirit of Garvey and Elijah that we have lost with this integration folly. Our own school systems are educating our own youth outside of the decadence in this school system with our own curriculum, after-school programs, online schools, old school, educating our youth, our young people, seeing how they're not going to law school and other school, old school values. Fathers educating their sons. That's a 2022 objective. This ain't politics. This is called black values. Of the program of the Nation of Islam, original program, new Black Panther Party program under my leadership, other kind of black nationalist programs. You know, what is our goals as black people? Well, we can't fix politics and Donald Trump, but we can fix these youth, our kids, and we can measure our progress into how many kids and youth we divert from running up in the malls and breaking into stores, and how many of them we convert and educate and stand up on their feet. So it's a lot of work that can be done. It's just old school, old time work. You know, it's called, saving your dollars and trying to get your hands on a piece of real estate in the black community for it all get eaten up. Just old school, hard line, educate self, reform self, build the black family, and things that are under our direct control. It's called black power, black nationalism. That's the way I say we'll gain power and gain political power, And then the way other ethnic groups, they talk about it all the time on this show, the way other ethnic groups, the Asians or the Chinese or the white Jews or others, the way they have been talked about on this show, wield power and pull themselves up for their bootstraps. Some of these fundamental things is what black people must do. We must return to the fundamentals and then stop playing games and running around in circles.
So is that, I guess the essence of what you said, is it separation? Do we need, we've talked about this quite a bit, whether we should form our own black political party, or Dr. Taylor last week was saying that, we should essentially just move to the South and control those areas. Your thoughts?
We are in agreement on that. We're talking about, we are a nation within a nation. That's what our philosophy should be. We are a nation within a nation. Of course, we want our own separate nation. We're all separate states in time. But understanding that we're 40 to 50 million blacks, so-called minority inside of America, that means we have to, on every level, to pool our resources and down to the level of now you're talking about specifically focusing on states. Well, that's very interesting because that's the talk in Mississippi today. I must say that all of the black organizations and black nationalist groups are going to be in Mississippi on Juneteenth for the 18th and the 19th. And we want to say in the spirit of Juneteenth, and where all of the black groups and self-defense groups and black nationalists will gather, we must remember Imari Obadele, the Honorable Chokwe Lumumba, and others that know that the Delta region, that the Black Belt is full of black cities and towns for black people that Kwame Ture and Stokely loved, and that real chances for self-determination and black power based on numerics and numbers favor black nationalism in Mississippi and in areas like that. So yes, I'm in agreement with you that there are some options that we haven't explored. There are some states where we have numerical majorities that make what I'm saying make even more sense, and those are many of those southern states where we can actually really command political power and power on every level. That's what SNCC and Stokely and them fighting for. That's what Attorney Shabazz and the New Black Panther Party is fighting for. But also we must understand that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, even in states that were majority white, like Illinois, I mean, he wasn't as fancy as all of the other spokesmen that were speaking. But at the end of the day, he had hospitals on the drawing board. I mean, he had the land, and his hospitals were about to open up, and we wouldn't be hollering about somebody else's vaccine if he had succeeded. But he also had bought up most of the south side of Chicago. And so we have areas that are majority black that have great potential. There will be activity there this year. We support that. But also in all areas around the country, we must understand that as the messenger had bought up south side Chicago, we should have bought up southeast D.C. I can say that as an individual, I have some of southeast D.C. But I'm saying, as a movement and as a people, there's a fleeting amount of time left that we could capture and buy up the inner cities of America before the white man does. So there's plenty of self-determination opportunities out here. There's plenty of hope for the red, black, and the green and black nationalism to provide a way for our people. We just need leadership to keep leading. We need voices like Carl Nelson to keep advocating, and we need all of y'all to understand that things are going to get better. Things are going to get better for those that know and understand that there's no hope in the integrated politics. I mean, we may have a black political party. Yeah, black political party should come, even if it does nothing more than just force the existing system to negotiate with us and to hold them hostage over the precious black vote. Some of these things are within reach as well on the grassroots level if we just work together.
So you think a black political party with more symbolism than substance?
No, I think it can have real wedge power. I'm not going to tell you that a black political party that may have maybe a couple of million members, just say it had 2 million members, that it's going to win the election. But I mean, it could jack the Democratic Party up, and it could make them be honest for the first time in their life, or try to be honest, because the black vote wouldn't be taken for granted. You know, black vote's taken for granted. And so, you know, the Tea Party and other parties at different points, Ross Perot and others, have been able to use it for what it's worth. And so I don't think it's symbolic. I think it can have some power. I just don't think it's the ultimate power that a black political party would wield. Yeah, a black political party would run candidates nationally, to run them strategically regionally, to run them strategically locally, probably could win some races, be a wedge in other areas. However, a black political party would do much more than just have elections. A black political party, if it's going to be like the Communist Party or any other revolutionary party, it's going to address all facets of life for black people, such as self-determination, such as fighting for unions and the working class. You know what I'm saying? It's a comprehensive party that was along the lines of the goals of the parties I like, the Black Panther Party and others, or the program of Elijah Muhammad. That's all I'm saying. If it's a real black political party, it's going to be beyond elections. It's going to embrace all of the other great things and great traditions I'm talking about. And to that extent, my name is Malik Zulu Shabazz, and my hand is open to all other black leaders and persons who are passionate about this cause that I, and on behalf of the organizations I represent, which is Black Lawyers for Justice, the New Black Panther Party, and the Black Power Movement, we're open to help achieve these goals. Our offices are open to you.
All right. And you think people are responding to what you do? Because, you know, some people are concerned when they hear black power. I'm talking about black folks now as well. Because, oh, man, that's too radical. That's too black. We can't get with that, you know. Are you still getting pushback like that from some parts of the black community?
Man, it's so rare. It's so rare. What I saw in Brunswick, Georgia at the Glenn County Courthouse, my brother, is that what I'm talking about, and that black power and black nationalism has gained control of the streets and gained control of the ground. I've learned throughout the years, since I've just had to assume my duty, since the passing of the Honorable Hashim Nzinga, in traveling around America, the Black Lives Matter movement has faded. I don't know whether influx of cash had brought it out or whatnot, but the streets are no longer controlled by Black Lives Matter.
Hold that thought right there, because that's an important point that you're making, the fading of Black Lives Matter, or at least the Black Lives Matter movement, if you will. Folks, you want to join this conversation with Attorney Malik Shabazz, reach out to us, 800-450-7876. We'll take your phone calls after the short break on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. And thanks for rolling with us, folks. Our guest is Attorney Malik Zulu Shabazz. He's founder of the Black Lawyers for Justice. Before we left, he was telling us that Black Lives Matter, at least the movement Black Lives Matter, it's not as potent as it was before. Can you expound on that for us, Attorney?
Well, that's true. Anytime you see a major race case, to be a trademark of Black Lives Matter, that is the Ahmaud Arbery trial, and you don't even see a formal presence of Black Lives Matter there for the whole trial, you must know that movement is waning in different areas around the country. It's just not what it was. But you know, we've had the Occupy Wall Street movement, and then you had the anti-war situation with Answer. So you always have these movements that pop up, and some of them, honestly speaking, are outside controlled. I mean, Black Lives Matter was not black originated, black necessarily controlled. There's many of them were good brothers and sisters. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are listening to me right now. Many of them were good brothers and sisters, and then there was a lot of stuff mixed in with it. For whatever reason, it's not what it was. That's just a material fact, no bias intended. The streets are turning towards black power. The streets and the courthouse and the grounds around the Arbery trial is filled with black power advocates and from key groups, United Black Militia, Black Panther Militia, from Virginia and other, black nationalist type group, Carolina Freedom Fighters, New Black Panther Party, Huey P. Newton Gun Club. But you would say, Mr. Carr, what are these radical groups? Well, these groups really aren't so radical, and just like people keep thinking, well, Trump and his folks is radical. But over there with the people, that's a 40% block of Americans, talking about the Trumpites. That's a 40% block. Fox News and them, they don't think they so radical. On their end, they say they practice in self-determination. And I'm here to tell you that these so-called black radical groups are just as normal and necessary, and they are winning over black people because they believe in self-defense for black people. They believe in accountability for black people. They don't believe in doing for self for black people and not groveling and begging white people. And this is the wave of the future. Black power is the wave of the future, and it's providing the juice, my brother, for civil rights and court cases. It's providing that environment where white folks is now scrambling to cut a deal with civil rights and give some white folks some sentences because there's a radical street that's building. And it's being heavily manned by this black power movement. And I want to say another thing. When they say, well, why would you, Attorney Shabazz, you're an attorney, you're a Howard University graduate, why would you affiliate yourself with such black militant or black radical organizations? And number one, my mentor and my teacher was a black radical. And I don't care if I'm the attorney at law or multimillionaire or any of that, I will never forsake my teacher. From Khalid Muhammad and the Honorable Louis Farrakhan and Elijah Muhammad, no matter how much status I get, and I would never forsake my duty from Howard University as a black professional to help my people beyond whatever material gains or whatever you think I have. So now why I'm affiliated with the New Black Panther, I'm affiliated, why I lead and continue to lead my brothers in the Panther Party is because of the social transformation. I've seen the potential prisoner, the potential robber, the potential stealer. I've seen the potential black man who will go down. I've seen him transform by being that black militant, that black panther, that black radical. I've seen the black men who I love and black women who I love, whose life will be going in a negative direction, become a positive contributors to the liberation struggle. So I see the transformative power of God and the power of Ma'at in working with these black groups. These are the brothers and sisters that's out on the ground, and they're fighting, and these are the ones that we have to appreciate, that this radical message can transform. I mean, Black Lives Matter was somewhat radical. It had a hold on the young people. But when as black power takes over and gets a hold on these young people, it's going to have a great effect. It's going to stop the killing and do a whole lot more. So everybody should embrace black power now. That's the way we stay in 2022, but on a higher and more sophisticated level, where it leads us to where we know it must go as elders and what they call OGs.
All right, got some folks want to talk to you, Malik. 800-450-7876. Bob's calling from Texas on line 1. Bob, you're on with Attorney Malik.
Hello, Attorney Malik and Carl. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Okay, good. Malik, the last time I saw and met you was in Houston, Texas, the home of Khalif Muhammad in 5th Ward, Texas. And it was in reference to a Sandra Bland rally. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes, well, I'm very familiar with the case, and I'm happy to talk to you again, my brother. Good to talk to you.
Yes. Very happy to talk to you, sir. And so I hear you mention Mississippi as a home for a black reunion, and I want to state my case in reference to Louisiana also, which is next to Mississippi. I grew up about 60 miles as a crow flies in Louisiana from Mississippi. And the difference between the two states was that Mississippi was under the influence of Irish occupation, and Louisiana was under the influence of French occupation. And in Louisiana, we had the jazz, we had another music called Zydeco, whereas in Mississippi they had the blues. And the blues was indicative of the way the Irish, who tried to show the world that they were white also, and they were very harsh upon the African American. And if you notice, a lot of the surnames of the Irish, Hannity, O'Reilly, and names such as that, they are the most harshest on the African American population as opposed to any other European immigrants to America. And I just want to bring that to light to African Americans, how the Irish are the worst oppressors.
Bob, do us a favor. Can you put it in? Bob, do us a favor. Can you put in a question for him so Attorney Malik can respond?
Yeah. So my question is, what is your take on the different type of Europeans that oppressed our people? Because my research shows that they were different types of oppressors, and as well as Irish and French and Germans. But I don't know if you have a take on that, but that is my question.
All right. Thanks, Bob.
Okay. We must answer this question, my brother, under the microscope of the teachings of the Honorable Dr. Francis Quest Wilson, the compensatory code of Professor Neely Fuller, and also we must take some lessons from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the lessons that we have all known. My dear brother, white racism and white supremacy is genetically coded in the genes of the white race. And so when we get so far down the line where we're talking about different types of white people as European, we must always go back to the root of it and understand that that white people are living under a system of genetic inferiority, and that they originally come from a source of genetic mutation. And by nature, they understand that fairness and justice and collaboration with African or melanated people who are of a stronger genetic makeup and who are indeed their genetic mothers and fathers, that to practice fairness and sharing and integration with them just as a fundamental rule would produce their destruction and annihilation. So by nature, they're fighting. When they're fighting us, they would have a defense if they were brought to court to say, I'm fighting you, black people, to stay alive because I am a genetic mutation. So as you come down the line, my dear brother, when you start talking about whether it's a Democratic white person or a Republican white person, my Honorable Malcolm X, or we were taught that all snakes are snakes. Some are poisonous and some are non-poisonous, and the snake that is non-poisonous is wish he had some facts. We all say that we have, and there have been, we understand they're giant browns. We understand that there's the white man that gave you or healed you, your doctor, or the white person that did a nice deed for you. That exist. But that is not the nature of this race that is the genetic and biological opposite of black people and have killed over 600 million black people. Yeah, remember, you're dealing with a race that is responsible for the killing of 600 million black, brown, and red peoples. And so my brother, the Honorable Khalid Abdul Muhammad, he teaches me that in all systems where there's the black-white dynamic, it's the white on the top and the black on the bottom. He says that it's in the Democratic Party system. It's the white Democrat on top and the black Democrat on the bottom. The white Republican on top, the black Republican on the bottom. It's the white Catholic or the white Christian on the top, the black Catholic and the black Christian on the bottom. It's the white Muslim or the white Jew on the top, or the black Jew and the black Muslim on the bottom. It's the white communist or the white socialist or the white leftist on the top, and it's the black communist, the black socialist, black leftist on the bottom. So what I'm saying, my brother, is black power. We have to understand that we can't waste time trying to pick and choose between which devil and that devil. We must understand that we are facing a harsh system of white racism, white supremacy. It ain't going to change. And if then there are white people that are here and listening that are sincere and try to fight for our people. And they should love my message. They should love my message because they should say that that black man is right. And black people, we just got to take a hard line right now. Stop worrying about other people's feelings and all of that. We got to start having the coldest and strongest feelings for ourselves. Get out of this condition.
Hold that thought right there. We got to take a short break. 800-450-7876 to speak to Attorney Malik. He'll take your calls after this quick break. Right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. Thanks for staying with us, folks. Our guest is the founder of the Black Lawyers for Justice. His name is Malik Zulu Shabazz. Got a question for him? Reach out to us, 800-450-7876, and we'll get you in. Before we do that, though, let me just remind you, coming up later this week, you're going to hear from futuristic researcher, Brother Sadiq Bakari. Also, Brooklyn lawmaker Charles Brown will be with us, and metaphysician Dr. B. So if you're in the DMV, keep your radio locked right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450 WOL. Let's take some calls for Attorney Malik. Barbara is on line 3, calling from California. Barbara, you're on with Attorney Malik.
Hi, I want to comment on the last thing that the attorney just said. And if you look at a chessboard, all of the two players have all of their people intact at the beginning of the game, but they're picked off piece by piece. I was just applying that to what you just said, to picking off or getting rid of white supremacy, and what your caller before pointed out, that they also come piece by piece. And knocking them off or getting rid of them, it seems to me that there ought to be some strategy for picking them off piece by piece, whether they're Irish or French or German or whatever other pieces that they come in, that should be the target of some strategy.
Well, Barbara, do us a favor. Put in a question for him so he can respond.
That was, okay. I have another one topic I'd rather talk about, and that's that he was talking about Mississippi. And as I look at the chessboard again, what the other side seems to be playing is a card called immigration. There are about 10 states in the United States that have a population of near or at 1 million people. And they're bringing in almost 2 million new people a year. That's 20 senators that are up for grabs. Mississippi, we have what, at 50-50 population? You know, we will still be fighting.
What's your question, man? Tell me your question. Tell me your question.
The question to you is, shouldn't there also be a strategy for we taking, with our 30 or 50 million people, a strategy for taking over the 20 senators that are in play, that someone seems to be putting up for grabs here in the United States, rather than Mississippi, where we will be fighting the battle for a lot longer, for a lot less reward.
Let's give him a chance to respond.
Now, which 20 senators? Now, you seem to be asking a pointed question. You say that there are 20
senators are in states where the population is just at 1 million or so people. If there is a mass movement to those states, those 2 senators come quicker than in Mississippi.
Well, these are important questions, ma'am. All of them are important, and all I can report to you here is that we're in a state of negotiations. This year of 2022, some of this progress is slow, but it's important, diplomatic. We are in the year 2022 where there will be extensive negotiations about this self-determination question as it pertains to Mississippi, as it pertains to elected officials and other guests that have come on the show. I think Omali Yeshiteli or Zaki Baruti have been on the air. I would say that this is a year where the leadership and the organizers are making every effort to talk with each other and gain consensus. And I do know that Juneteenth weekend, June 18th and 19th in Mississippi, is going to be a tremendous outpouring of support for self-determination, what we call Black Power. And there will be on Sunday, June 19th in Natchez, Mississippi, the largest gathering of Black Second Amendment and self-defense groups in American history. That there may be 20,000, 10,000, or 20,000 brothers and sisters who believe in self-determination, believe in a nation of our own, believe we should defend ourselves, educate ourselves. They're going to be in Mississippi for activities, and we're going to be there for negotiation. And I invite every one of those leaders that come on this show, regardless of any issues that they may have, that they are welcome also. And I'm open, and our diplomatic hand is open to everybody who wants to see our people do something stronger. I'm not saying that whatever wing of this movement that I represent controls anything, or I'm not representing it as anything more than what it is. All I'm saying is that I represent a block of Black freedom fighters, Black attorneys, and Black nationalists. Our door is open so we can talk about these. Not only talk about these questions, but get something done. We don't want to move beyond talk and get things done in the year 2022. And our doors are open. And therefore, ma'am, I think this is a good year of hope. I think you should participate in the procedures or listen to this show, because I say that self-determination and Black Power is going to have a strong year in 2022.
All right.
Black Power.
Thank you, Barbara. And thank you for your call. 800-450-7876. D's on line 4. D's in D.C. D, you're on with Attorney Malik.
Hi, how you doing, Mr. Malik? My name is D. I'm here in Washington, D.C. I was born and raised. I like to believe that I'm a pretty intelligent young man. I don't have that much education, though, as far as school. My situation is that I have a sister here in the city, and she's mentally ill. So I have to go to these meetings with the people that's the head of the mentally ill people, and they be talking in a language that I can't understand, or around me, or trying to write information up like they helping my sister, and they getting funds helping her, but they're not helping her. She decompensated since 2017, and they say they never seen nobody decompensate this fast. So my question to you, if you can help me, what I'm trying to find out, how do I help her? How do I get a lawyer to help her? And she's always resistant. She's resistant because she's mentally ill. And I keep telling them that, no, she ain't always been like this. This happened due to an incident. But I can't get through to them, and because of rights that she has.
Let me ask you a quick question, my brother. My brother, is she in a program or an agency in the District of Columbia?
Yeah.
Okay, which agency would that be?
Yeah, it's called Green Door, and she have an ACT team.
Green Door and an ACT team. Okay, here it is, my brother. Why don't you take my email, and then I would like to. I know quite a bit about mental health issues or persons that are facing mental health challenges. It's an important question you're asking, and you probably need some specific professional answers that I, as a professional, can't answer. But I think you should probably keep her status, or maybe not on the air like this. Can you take my email?
Yeah.
I'll make sure to take my email. My email is attorney.shabazz@yahoo.com. And I will, if you press me on that email, I will advise you on how to help her and get your situation straight.
Okay, can you just bear with me on spelling that right?
Attorney, ATTORNEY .Shabazz, SHAB as in black, A zebra. Okay, that's Shabazz, like Malcolm's name, and mental health issues and how to handle them and the ACT team and all that's very important, brother. Let's discuss it privately. We'll help you out, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Steve. What's your name again, brother?
Thank you, D.
Okay, we'll look for him. I'll get his message.
It was D, yeah, it was D. I got a tweet for you. I'm going to sort of boil it down to the simple question, because he says, can you ask Ms. Malik how can Mayor Browser and the D.C. City Council get away with mandates, proposing a law requiring people to show proof of vaccination to eat at restaurants, go to bars, attending sporting and social events in the district. And the tweeter wants to know, does it violate the 1996 HIPAA Act rights to privacy?
You know, I'm sure it might, man. I mean, this is an important legal question, and I need to try to catch up to it. It is true that the District Mayor Muriel Bowser has come down with a harsh ruling that you can't go anywhere in D.C. without the vaccination. This comes on the heel of this Omicron spike, similar to New York. And I can't tell you whether it's constitutional or not. It doesn't sound constitutional, but you know, so I need to check myself about the legal challenges. I did state earlier that the majority of legal challenges are covered, but I may have to amend that now that you remind me what the Mayor Bowser has recently thrown down with these mandates. And I understand that the mayor is concerned legitimately about the spread of coronavirus. We all are. But I do think that that's harsh, and I can't say right now that her actions are constitutional in that regard. And I just need to see. I need to see what's going on. I'm sure that if it's not, there's going to be some pushback. So I would have to see what the latest blows are in that. But things are cracking down, and we're hoping that this Omicron wave, hopefully that this wave of Omicron is what's going to be the beginning of the end of this COVID situation.
Attorney Malik, have you been following the Ghislaine Maxwell trial? Because now they're saying that she was convicted, and now they're talking about she may win a new trial. Have you been following that trial any at all?
Yes, I have. Yes. You know, she's the aide to Epstein, and she's recently convicted on the sex trafficking charges of minors. And this is the case you speak on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Maxwell, in that case, I guess it's a jury question right now. There was a jury that came out at the end of the trial and her conviction, and I guess the juror had not disclosed that that the juror themselves had experience or been a victim of sexual molestation. And so since this trial involved the exploitation of minors sexually, it's alleged by the defense that this was a fatal blow to their client's defense, and that it materially affected the results of the trial. And so I guess that's what's at stake now. She's lost the trial. She's been convicted. And the attorneys are saying now, aha, there was a jury error. The jury is either tampered with or corrupted. And those are the stakes there. And
is that grounds for a new trial?
No, not. I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Okay, and that is
we got to cut it right there because they tell me we got like 20 seconds.
Yeah, the answer is no, and it's not gonna work. The jury and the process doesn't have to be perfect, and we'll get right back to you, brother. Keep fighting, okay?
All right. How can folks reach you real quick?
Oh, they can you got my email. I've given it several times. My number at my law office here in D.C. area is 301-513-5445. I'm 301-513-5445. That's the law office of Malik Shabazz, Black Lawyers for Justice. And if you are a person who believes in organizing and you want to be a part of that movement I've been talking about, text 202-699.
We're flat out of time. We got to run. So, folks, thank you for all the information. Folks, stay strong, stay positive. Please stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock right here on FM 95.9 and AM 1450. WOL, where information is power. Peace.